Councillor Wayanko.
You don't even have to do anything. You just call it in order and do the declaration and then the delegations. The agenda comes after everyone speaks. We do that because sometimes people want to pull things from the agenda. Delegations and add it.
I would like to call this meeting to order. It's now 1 o'clock. And the first thing I would like to do is to ask, is there any declaration of pecuniary interest among my fellow councillors? I see none. The next item on our agenda are the budget delegations, which we'd like to go ahead with. There's a slight change in order in that the library board will be presenting first due to a medical appointment, I believe, of one of the presenters. So, to the library board, please.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Diane Waters, and I'm the former chair of the library board. I was hoping to continue on, but I did find out yesterday that I had not been accepted onto the library board. I had prepared a presentation yesterday talking about the stuff that the library board was going to do, and I'm here to support Tracy in her budget, and also I was very instrumental in putting together this budget. I am a chartered accountant, I work on budget stuff, and so I wanted to be here to support her and also to do what I hoped would have been the presentation that I would have gone had I been continuing on as a board member. So what I want to do is we have some new councillors, and I just want to refresh some of the ideas about governing and just refresh one of the ones that have been there. The library board is established under the Ontario Public Libraries Act, which falls under, it's actually the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport that's been added in. The Township of Georgian Bay Public Library is a corporation established by the municipality and under the control and direction of a library board. The public library is a registered charity, so we can give out tax receipts for any donations. Library board members have a term that matches council. The first meeting of a council normally appoints a library board, but I understand that the board was appointed yesterday. So for a month or so, we technically didn't have a board, but everything was smooth. Now we've had some resignations from our board, so that's up in the air as to what's going on. The board has to be composed of at least 5 board members. They have to be resident in the township, 18 years of age, or Canadian citizens. So there's not a real high threshold there for people to meet. While not a requirement under the Act, in the past our board has had 1 councillor on the board. And in fact, the Act only stipulates that the majority of board members cannot be councillors. The board is responsible for the stewardship and the direction of our 3 libraries. We do this by holding strategic planning sessions with staff and interested parties, 10 board meetings a year, and the establishment of various committees where we look at things that are of in-depth nature that we want to look at. For example, our 2 libraries in Honey Harbour and in Port Severn are looking at moves. Under the Ontario Libraries Act, there are 2 main areas that the board seeks approval for council. The first being the approval of our budget, which is why we are here today. And of course, the budget contains the municipal grant with funds, because it funds over 70% of our operations. We receive grants from federal, provincial, and other bodies, and we apply for different grants as well, and then we get fundraising and donations. The second thing that council is responsible for to do with the library board is if the library wants to lease out, purchase or sell land or buildings, it needs council of approval. Council and township do not control the library board or the library. The library board controls the libraries and entrusts its day-to-day operations and staffing to our one and only employee, our CEO, which is currently Tracy Fitchett. Last year, the board entered into a memorandum of understanding between the township and the library to lay out the relationship between the two. The township provides administrative support to the library, such as accounting services and HR support. It is outside the requirements of the Ontario Libraries Act, but is certainly appreciated by the library board. And this is what I was going to say, but I'm going to continue to say it because I worked on it. I'm very excited about our new board. In the past, we have been down to 5 board members, which made committee work really difficult. We ended up with everybody, the entire board was on every committee, and it just got unworkable. But with spending a lot of hard time and talking to a lot of people that are interested in the library, we actually had a tremendous support coming back, and we ended up putting forward to council yesterday 12 board members, which bring new skills, diverse background, and very importantly, and incredibly enthusiastic about where the libraries are going for the next 4 years. I'm a chartered accountant. I was looking into doing tax-free clinics. We've done them in McTier. We should be doing them down here. We had somebody in the HR department that was looking at doing seminars for teaching kids how to do resumes or job searching skills. That, of course, has kind of gone by the wayside now. We were all very enthusiastic. In conclusion, your library board is very committed to making sure the needs of all residents, both permanent and seasonal, are met. Libraries are no longer quiet places where one comes to read and borrow a book, but they're places for our community to meet, learn, and interact and grow. I will now turn the presentation over to Tracy, and then I will pick it up at the very end where I have the conclusion about the projects that we have going on. So I'll turn over to Tracy. Thank you.
Thank you. The Township of Georgian Bay Public Library consists of 7 part-time staff members and 1 full-time CEO, which is myself. When the presentation was prepared, we were looking at 9 potential trustees representing Honey Harbor, Matchia, and Port Severn, as well as additional service volunteers. From the chart, you can see this is how our revenue is broken down. 72% of our revenue comes from the municipality, 14% is provincial funding, 2% is federal funding, 7% are from other resources such as fundraising, donations, and then 5% is internal reserves. Each year what we've been finding is that in order to make the budget work, we've been having to draw from internal reserves in order to compensate for line items that we're not adding to, such as hydro, propane, things like that. So not every year do we have to end up drawing from that, but we have to build it into our budget. Now our expenses, 71% of all of our expenses goes to staffing the library, all of our wages. Only 12% is for our collection development, and that's for our books, magazines, DVDs, everything that people borrow. 13% is utilities and maintenance on the building, and then 4% is information technologies. We have to keep our computers up to date because people are coming in to use them, and that's part of what that is for. Why is the library important? It is a community hub. With today's technology, people often wonder if a library is still important. They have evolved because the needs of the communities are always changing, progressing, and so they become the community hub of most towns. The library is the place to connect with each of our 3 communities. Our year-round and seasonal residents, plus visitors to our area, use the library, the services, the programs, which make it a vibrant and welcoming go-to place. We uniquely offer free, accessible, informal, and self-directed learning opportunities. Right now, we have 743 permanent and 1,065 part-time adult members. These numbers do not take into consideration children, grandchildren, paid members, or internet users. Adult and children programming is the second most important priority that has been identified through surveys, requests, and suggestions. We have been asked to provide programs for all ages, workshops, computer training, have social opportunities for people to come in just to be able to get together and talk, and more. We also provide valuable tourist information. There's not a designated tourist information center in Honey Harbor or MacTier, so visitors come into the libraries to find out where can they go, what can they see, what can they do while they're in our area. We also provide additional municipal services such as burn permits, dog licenses, Port Severn park passes, water test sample bottles, battery recycling. We assisted with the election this past year as well. Our circulation stats for 2018 are actually quite impressive. Basically, we had 10,049 people sign out DVDs, like borrowed DVDs, which is incredible for our small area. 7,088 were the adult books. We had 3,587 for children and youth books. We had online downloads, which include ebooks as well as magazines. And then we also had walk-in inquiries and then computer and wireless users. It's amazing how in today's technology, there's a lot of people still out on islands that do not have access to the internet. And they rely on our libraries to come in and use free internet access. Whether during open hours or after hours, they have access to that. And from the number on the screen, 19% have been using that, which is pretty big. Programs for our communities. We have been asked by so many people within our township to provide various programs that will interest people of all age groups. And all of our communities need them. People need to know that they can stay within our township and fulfill their recreational needs and their general interest needs. They don't have to go elsewhere in order to be able to do this. Over the past 5 years, we provided programs in Mactier and Honey Harbor for 9 weeks during the summer. These programs have been very successful. They were geared towards the children while the school's out. Each year, we've had an increasing number of children attending the summer programs, including the Township of Georgian Bay's Mactier Summer Day Camp children. Last year, they were making up between 17 and 25 children each week when they came to our programs. It was incredible. Starting this fall, we introduced a variety of programs for children, adults, and families, which have been very successful. An example, a few of the programs is our Pumpkin Mania, All Hands on Gardening, Photo Contest, Girls' Day Out, Pirate Day, Teddy Bear Sleepover, Upcycled Crafts. Are you smarter than a librarian? That was really cool. There are also many more programs. This was just a list of a few of them. All of them were well attended. Okay. This is just a sample of a few of the pictures that we've taken for our various programs. So everybody has a really good time when they come out. We've had quite a few very positive responses. We always ask for an evaluation form when the program is finished. So people are impressed with the staff, how the program is delivered, and the attendance. It's actually absolutely wonderful. Now for 2019, we really want to focus on trying to bring more to the community. But there is a cost associated to bringing the programs. Most of the participants do not pay for any fees for these programs, aside from some examples, depending on the hard cost of the program. By offering these, the library is filling the programming void within the township. In order to be able to continue to offer these and many more programs on a year-round basis, we are requesting from Council that you consider providing the library budget $3,000 for programming expenses. These expenses include the purchase of materials for the programs, as well as the prep time and staff time to deliver them. Without the additional funding, we will not be able to offer the variety of programs year-round that the residents within the township are in need of. When this slide presentation was prepared, the actual figures on this was not actually up to date. Now they are, so I apologize for this not being accurate, but if you could maybe refer to the budgeted numbers aside from the actuals, that would be great. Our budget is very modest. There are not many line items that can be reduced or eliminated in order to reduce the overall balance. The majority of the line items have remained the same dollar amounts over the past few years. Unfortunately, we have had to draw funds from our reserves in order to meet the increases to certain expenses such as wages and utilities. We cannot continue to draw from the reserves each year since they are limited. This year, we are focusing on additional fundraising and on donations to help us. This is why we're requesting additional funds for programming expenses, because it has not been a budget line that has been on our budgets previously. Now, in conclusion, I'm going to turn it back to Diane.
Thanks, Tracy. Our staff are really ambassadors of the township who know the area and provide valuable information to tourists as well as residents. As you can see from Tracy's presentation, we have evolved and are continuing to adapt to the need of our community, both seasonal and permanent. Our staff working the front lines hear from patrons and are a great source of feedback. What amazes me is, and I think this is important for you as counselors, is a number of the staff keep saying, it's so nice, they hear from patrons saying, it's so nice to see our tax dollars benefiting us. They don't think of the roads or the garbage pickup or anything else, but they really like the fact when they can come into a library and access. Just one comment I was just thinking about mentioning is that when we don't charge for programmings, we are asking for donations. We are actually prohibited under the Libraries Act for charging for any book borrowing or DVDs or anything. So we can't even do a nominal fee to try and get money that way. That's just completely not allowed. And one of the things to try and connect with our staff was this fall I hosted the first of what I hope to be an annual staff board retreat, where we came together to listen to each other and make sure the board has had correct information to steer the libraries. This year we had a change in CEO, and there was a lot of turmoil in the staff, and we felt it was very important that the board reach out to them and, listen to them and hear, because the board is making decisions, and we don't want to be making decisions in a vacuum. As many of you know, the library stepped in to assist the township with the election. Our library enabled volunteers to register and to vote. Our staff was trained and additional hours were added to the library to help out. Recently, the library has also assessed our usage number, just over the past few weeks, and made a quick decision to reduce the hours in Honey Harbor and Port Severn, as we were just not seeing the traffic there in the winter. We're thinking the problem with Honey Harbor is the fact that the grocery store is closed for the winter. And so what we did is we decided to close them down, and rather than wasting valuable resources, we reduced the staff hours and have plans to use these saved resources to help pay for the staffing of innovative programs over the March break. So these are just two things to show you just how carefully the library looks at their resources. We're constantly going, okay, are we getting the most bang for our buck for staff being there? As I'm sure you're aware, we run a very tight ship. There is not much leeway in our budget. Based on the pie chart, the vast majority, 71% of our expenses, are salaries and wages. We conducted a survey of libraries in the area a number of years ago to find out where we are in the pay scale, and we're definitely at the low end. But that being said, I am absolutely amazed at how we're able to attract a very dedicated and enthusiastic staff that often put out more of their own time unpaid to benefit the library. We also have volunteers that provide countless hours dedicating themselves to the library, along with the great volunteers that help the library. I was so pleased that when a public call went out for the library board that we had such a tremendous response, and as a result I was hoping that we would have 12 re-energized board members. In the budget we presented today, we have increased the budget amounts for donations and fundraising, as we believe these are important to expand these resources of revenue. In the past, that has really not been done. What is not included in the budget is the prospective moves of 2 of our libraries in the coming year. As these moves have not been finalized, there is absolutely no way that we can monetize the impact of these moves. But we're hopeful that however, the board is planning, or was planning, on having a large fundraising event to defer some of the costs associated with these moves. It's very easy when you're having a new library being opened we were looking at doing a gala or something like this to try and get a lot of people in. We had a date picked out, and we were trying to bring a lot of money forth to help pay for the library move either to Brissett or to the one in Honey Harbor. I think the one in Honey Harbor might be happening sooner. So we had set up that we had a committee to champion a large event. We had people with marketing experience, and so we hope that council will continue to see the value to the community that the library has provided in the past and the prospects for an exciting community driven in the future. Just before I turn it over to any questions and answers, I just wanted to say that I have thoroughly enjoyed my time as a board chair. I took that job, I got that job when I missed one board meeting, and I ended up being nominated, which taught me not to ever have board meetings. But that being said, I decided that it was after our strategic planning session when I met with a lot of the stakeholders and staff and found out just what a great, enthusiastic staff and board we had. And it has been great, and I'm actually heartbroken that I can't continue on in that role. But Council has made the decision, and they have the full authority under the Ontario Libraries Act to do that, and I have to respect that. But I thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Councillors, are there any questions that you might have for our presenters? Councillor Cooper.
Tracy, if you don't mind, I'm looking at this slide that shows the library statistics.
Yes.
And I just wondered if you could let me know, or if you have any statistics that show the breakdown by location.
I don't have them with me. I do have them. I actually have it tracked, like I have many binders, and I have everything, all the stats, all cataloged, everything. I summarized it for here to do like an overall snapshot of the library in general, but I do have them individually.
Can I just make a comment? One of the One of the things that we noticed when we were looking at the stats for Honey Harbour and Port Severn to do the thing is we noticed, which we were very pleased with, that the circulation and number of bodies coming through in the doors in McTier has increased, like year after year. So that in November of this year is way up from November of last year. So that's, continuing to go on.
So just for sort of a follow-up, I would be most interested to see the breakdown between the three libraries in terms of actual stats. That would be helpful.
Sure, I can send that to you. I'll send it to all the councilors.
That'd be lovely. Thank you.
No problem.
Any other councillors have any questions? Thank you very much for your very professional presentation. Greatly appreciated. Thank you. Next on our list would be Crime Stoppers, please.
Hi everyone, my name is Leslie Woodley. This is Harry Patterson. I am the police coordinator for Crime Stoppers for your program, C.o.W from Muskoka. Sorry. Harry is the president of our board, and we are here. I'll try to keep it short. I know I have 5 minutes. I'm willing to answer any question, but I just thought I would explain a bit about our program. I don't know how much everybody knows about the program. I am a donated body from the OPP to coordinate, so OPP pays for me. We have a volunteer board. We have a volunteer committee in almost every area now. They are responsible for fundraising, awareness, getting the word out, explaining how Crime Stoppers works. We are funded only through donations and fundraising, so we are always looking for help, partially why we're here. I'm going to give you just a little history so you know how it works. When people call in a tip, they can either call the number or use our website. They are not required to give any personal information, so they can see a post online or they can just volunteer some information. Sorry, I've got a bit of a cold here. So they can volunteer the info, see a post online. They might want to say, I know that person, I don't want to be involved. That person might be my neighbor, my relative. They don't want to use their name. They don't want to go to court. They don't want to deal with the police. So that's what we're for. You're completely anonymous. No names, no numbers, no addresses. We take your information, we forward it to the police. For our area, we use OPP, and I think it's 11 detachments. Barrie City, South Simcoe, Shelburne, Orangeville, and Rama police. So basically, once we forward the information to the police, we have to clean the tips, make sure there's no personal information. We forward it to the police. They get back to us within 30 to 60 days, whether they used it or not. And then we are waiting for a tipster to call back to see if we use the information. Excuse me. At that point, if the police use the information to lay a charge or solve a crime, we have a sort of a computer program that we use. We input all the information. We get a tip recommendation for a reward. At that point, our board of directors will vote yes or no for the reward and how much. And then again, we're waiting for a tipster to communicate with us. We will tell them that they have a reward waiting for them. They choose the branch. We use the TD Bank. They choose the branch. We give them a scrambled reward pickup number, and they can go in and pick it up at their leisure. So there's no names at the bank, no mention of Crime Stoppers, nothing like that. So it's all completely anonymous. I have some stats here. I think you guys have, those are from October now. Our current stats for 2018, though, for the whole program area, Simcoe, Dufferin, and Muskoka, we received 2,542 tips. Now it says since inception beside that. That's since 1987 when our program came into effect for Simcoe, Dufferin, and Muskoka. Arrests made last year were 237. The amount of rewards we approved was over 21,000 just for last year. So we have to do a lot of fundraising, asking for help from a lot of communities. And that's how we're getting all of our money, other than me being donated by OPP. OPP also pays for our gas and maintenance to our vehicles and things like that. So each year, you're never quite 100% sure what the rewards are going to be, depends on the crimes. So if it's a homicide or a robbery, those are going to pay out higher than maybe some of the lower crimes. So you can't really forecast that for sure. The amount of drugs seized last year, over $146,000 worth. Now again, that varies year to year depending on the value of the drugs and how many tips. We do get a lot of drug tips. Now the marijuana laws have all changed, so that's gonna adjust the drugs a little bit. Last year, our total property recovered was over $74,000, and I can tell you already, as of today, even for this year, for property recovered, we're already up over $200,000. So that just depends day to day what you're recovering, if it's a high-end vehicle or a trailer, things like that are whatever the value is. So those numbers are pretty fluid and changing all the time. I think I told you our program's been around since 1987. Our expenses are things like our vehicle that we lease. We have an office manager that's part-time. We have a tip taker that's working in our office. We also, after hours and on weekends, we have a call center. So we pay per call, per online tip, per however many minutes they're on the phone with a tipster. They monitor the online calls on the weekend. So we're paying for things like that, all the associated insurances, money that goes out initially for fundraising in hopes that you get the money back. You always have to pay out to book facilities in hopes that you're getting the money back. So those are the kinds of expenses we have. Harry could probably tell you a little bit more about that, but he's got probably more numbers there than me.
Well, Leslie has given you pretty much of the information that I was going to talk about as well. We do have a part-time office manager, and we do have a part-time tip taker in our office. The OPP pays for the maintenance, etc., on our vehicles, but we have to pay for the gas, etc. But in order, the primary thrust of the program is the paying of tips, and that's when we rely very, very heavily on donations. That's what makes the program work, and we've always had an excellent, over the last several years, we've had an excellent relationship with the township here, and we hope to continue that relationship. And for that reason, we were going to be asking you if you would be willing to contribute $1,000 for our next year. I was part of your community policing committee here, serving with Brian, and I was somewhat disappointed when it collapsed, but nonetheless, we were here to support Brian if he needed us. And if anything was to come up again in the future, and the community policing committee got reestablished. We're here for him if he wants us. That's about all we have to say.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
Councillors, Councillor Jarvis?
Just a point of clarification, so you, Crime Stoppers operates in the municipalities of Simcoe, Dufferin, and Muskoka?
Yes.
Our program.
Yeah, we have committees. The committees are set up, and they're usually based in the primary community within their area, and they have a monthly meeting to discuss. Their function is community education and also fundraising, and they come up with ideas on how to fundraise for us.
There is actually 38 programs in the province, so ours is Simcoe, Dufferin, Muskoka. There's Toronto, Halton, Peel, all the different areas.
As far as area is concerned, we are one of the largest areas in the province. Well, not one of the smaller populations for that large area.
Councillor Hazelton?
Thank you for your presentation. Quick question for you. I heard you talk about liaising with the OPP. Do you liaise with the OPP Marine units?
We are able to liaise with anybody. So any tip information that we get, if it's something that would apply to Marine, it would go to them.
My understanding is the road-based police are totally different than the Marine-based police, and they don't really talk a lot. And so when we deal with the water-based police strategies, it's a very different world. I'm just wondering, do you...
Are you talking about OPP on
Yes.
the water?
Yeah.
OPP on the water is all the same as OPP on the land. It's the same people.
Well, it's a different, apparently they're different branches. So the people that we have to liaise with are,
A little.
yeah. Hmm?
I think you're getting a little off topic.
No, but
in your presentation.
No, but it's relevant for our water-based communities.
Yeah.
I
So-
can only tell you all the Marine officers I know are also road officers, so they're not just Marine. They answer calls in their car, or they're scheduled for Marine. So if a tip applies to something in a community that's on the water, if there's like a crime occurring, impaired boating or something like that, if there's something that gets reported, it goes through our sources. When I send it to my recipients, they are usually a crime unit member, a sergeant, and it gets dispersed to the correct unit. So if it's a drug call, it's over here. If it's about a robbery or property crime, it's here. If it's a Marine call, it goes, so it gets dispersed to the area that it's for.
Councillor Bochek?
Yeah, thanks very much for your presentation. I think it's well received. Just a couple of comments. One is to Crime Stoppers themselves. If in the future you could furnish the township with any events that you're having locally, I know we attend the dances and the fundraising dances that are throughout Simcoe and Muskoka.
Yes.
To raise funds, but if you could send a notification through to our clerk or to someone about any events that are happening, I'm sure we get in our newsletter, maybe get it out there to gain some support for you as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's me that sends out that information, so if maybe I will grab that information before I leave today,
Great.
and I can forward
Super.
what we have.
Thank you.
Councillor Jarvis?
At the risk of going on something too long, I need clarification with regards to what Councillor Hazelton asked. Our water-based OPP is based out of Midland. So
That's right.
do you still coordinate with that unit?
Yep, that's
Yep.
South Georgian Bay OPP, so
Thank you.
that's part of this area. Yeah.
We have within the Midland, within our committee, which covers Tiny Tay, Georgian Bay Township, Midland, and Penetang
Christian
We
Island.
have Christian Island, yes. Within all of that, we do have a CSO from the Midland detachment.
Councillor Cooper?
It's not a question, just a point of clarification. The Midland OPP, as I understand it, service the water-based community on Georgian Bay, but the funds that the Township of Georgian Bay sends to pay for OPP costs go to Bracebridge. So that, just to clarify, our support, our financial support that we send out from this township, which is a lot of money, goes over to Bracebridge.
We
Okay.
also deal with Bracebridge OPP, Huntsville OPP, they're all in our area as well.
Yep.
Councillor Bocheck?
Yeah, just one more point in fact here to the two new incoming councillors. At each term of government, we're usually afforded the ability to go out on the Marine unit through the policing committee, and that's a good fact-finding mission to get out, ride on the boat, see what they do, ask all your questions and that. So if you're interested, let me know, and we'll certainly get on board with that as well too.
I can support Brian in that because I was on 2 rides with him on the boat.
Yeah, very informative.
Yep.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Our next presentation is from Georgian Bay Forever.
Thank you very much, Mayor and councillors. It's my pleasure to be here today in front of you, and thank you for the support that you gave the Phragmites program over the last 2 years. I'm the Executive Director of Georgian Bay Forever, so I'm responsible for hiring and overseeing the students and people that execute the program. I wanted to show you just a quick little film of the eradication that we did last year. Bear with me for just a second. We had a very busy but successful year last summer, and our Frag Busters program got off to a great start with our hiring in the township of 5 students that we used as community ambassadors to go out and educate the public, do dock visits, do all the mapping of the Phragmites stands, and then actually help to recruit and coordinate the community to come out and do the control measures. In the Township of Georgian Bay, the funding for the community Phragmites eradication project comes from the Township of Georgian Bay, who committed to 15, and then we made a request for an additional 5 to allow us to take advantage of some equipment, which I want to thank the council for very quickly approving last year. That enabled us to continue to move forward with the machines that I'll show you. We also are able, as a charity, to apply for grant money and actually leverage the money that the town gives us and use that as seed money to expand out about 3 to 4 times additional support for these projects. We also received money directly from the Honey Harbour Association and the Cognition Community Association, who also contributed money for student salaries in the program to run and some equipment. We are able to provide donor-supported funding to do all the training and equipment purchasing management. We hired, trained, and supervised the student ambassadors who mapped and supported the community. And then the Honey Harbour Association was actually able to get money from the Federation of Ontario Cottagers Associations to purchase an additional cutter for the community. So we had lots of equipment and people out doing these cuts. The history of this project in Honey Harbour started back in about 2015. We did 4 sites. That's all we were able to do back in the first. By 2016, we were 10 times that, up to 40. In 2017, we did 71 sites. And then this past year, we only did 41. But the reason for that was, first of all, we had about 23% reduction in the actual number of infestations that we saw. So the initial controls we did for the first 3 and 4 years actually worked, and we'd eradicated some sites. But the second thing was we decided to actually go after some of the larger stands in the community instead of just the little peripheral ones, and actually try to attack some of these bigger, more established sites. We were finding it more and more difficult to recruit people to come out and actually do the cutting. It's a little bit of intense, hard labor. And sometimes, with programs, these things ebb and flow in the community and the lexicon of the community. But because we had the students out there, we actually had them doing a lot of the work themselves. We try not to become directly the only people out there doing the grass cutting, the Phragmites cutting. We really do want this to be a community engagement. But you can see that the density of sites that we're dealing with here in the map on the right is about 154 identified sites. When we go back this spring in 2019, we expect that the site numbers will be down, probably somewhere to around 120, and again, we'll experience another reduction because we can't measure how effective our previous 2 years are until we go out this coming year and see how we did last summer. The 40,000 kilograms of Phragmites removed here we are seeing done in addition to the hand removal, and this is me just out at a training seminar in the field, so I'm not just behind a desk somewhere, I'm actually out doing some of the work. But training the community to remove this a stem at a time is, as you can imagine, pretty time consuming. But it does protect all of the other native species in the wetlands as we go. So the number of sites here is not representative of the fact that Honey Harbour is the worst place in Ontario or anything like that. It's the fact that we've mapped 100% of the sites in Honey Harbour. So if you do use the tools like EDD maps, you'll see that Honey Harbour is probably overrepresented because we have every single site that's possibly in the community mapped out so we can keep track of them. Ground zero is really Lily Pond and also Georgian Bay Islands National Park. And if you look at the southeast side of Georgian Bay Islands National Park, there's a mile or so of frag really thick out there. The good news about that, and I can't speak for the park, but I can give you a little bit of an idea of the draft project there. The park has received some significant funding that they'll be announcing for a 4-year project to eradicate Phragmites also. And that's really the opportunity that the council can look at and decide if you want to take some advantage of in the increased funding that we've put forward as a request. When we went out to start the lily pond control, we also found a second invasive species. I believe council is all aware that Phragmites can grow into the roadbed and up through the asphalt and start to destroy the actual physical infrastructure. That's why it's important not to leave it in the roadbeds, and it's why we've been talking to the Ministry of Transportation and trying to get them involved. I think we've reached out to you. Township of the Archipelago did a deputation to the minister. The minister is arranging to have the parliamentary secretary come out and actually meet with the archipelago, and we've tried to ask the archipelago to expand that invitation out to include other Georgian Bay townships. But this is Japanese knotweed, and Japanese knotweed will grow right through a concrete foundation and destroy it. So it was another invasive species that we found that we were able to eradicate at the same time. Here's invasive Phragmites in the background in Lily Pond, and that's the invasive Japanese knotweed. And again, this is a video of 2 days of the controls that we did at Lily Pond. The equipment that we brought in was through Janice Gilbert at the Ontario Phragmites Working Group and a company she's started called the Invasive Phragmites Control Center. These are called truck saws. They're floating, low-impact wetland tools that can go into a wetland and cut invasive Phragmites out without destroying a lot of the other plants that are in the area. And you can see we had 18-foot tall Phragmites to begin with and a solid kind of wall of it. Bin City and Tom Fitzgerald were amazing. They donated the bins and the trucking, and we paid for some gas for him, but all of his time was donated to the effort for free, as well as the loader that the township provided directly for this particular 2-day event, and an operator for both days, which was greatly appreciated. You can start seeing some open water, and the Phragmites is all removed in the foreground. There's more out in the middle. On the second day, we had a pretty big pile, because Tom was having a hard time keeping up with us, running back and forth to Simcoe. But you start seeing some open water actually there, which means that we now have some habitat restored. And in a span of 2 days with 2 of these machines, we were able to remove about 40,000 kilos. So pretty significant impact. And this is a 2-day activity. We estimated that we actually, to get out into the middle where there's more, need about 3.5 days out there and a half day to redo the area that we did this year, because we have to do successive years of cutting to ensure that the plant gets drowned out. These machines are about $7,500 for the 2 of them per day. So we had budgeted $5,000 per day, and that's why we had to come to council and ask for a little bit of extra money. So it's $15,000 for the 2-day period. If we put that to 4 days, it ups the amount to $30,000. The park has received, as I said, a significant amount of money, which they'll be announcing specifically. But they would like to bring these pieces of equipment up into their space and work out on Beausoleil as well in a pilot, probably in late October, early October. If that happens, then we would probably be able to get some synergies. We wouldn't have the same expenses of floating the equipment up and things like that. We could take advantage of both programs and try to actually cooperate and see if there are some savings that we could realize between the two. But up to date now, we've removed about 100,000 kilograms of Phragmites on the coastline of Georgian Bay. And we think that, because we're starting to see specifically 23% in the township, some reductions now, there is a possibility of actually achieving the eradication that we set out to do, and we can see kind of some light at the end of the tunnel. So the opportunity cost and the reason for the increased amount of money that we've put in front of council for your consideration is the fact that this significant event of receiving money at Georgian Bay Island National Park is the first time they've received monies for Phragmites control. They will be commencing the program in April of 2019. We are helping them with their management plan, so they will be completely integrated into the management plan that we've been doing at Honey Harbor. The park funds, as we understand it, are not strictly confined to park property. In other words, they may be able to bleed some of that money into the community and provide cost savings to the township, the community, and the park itself. And then it's the first significant money. So really, at this point, we have no budget from them. We have no project defined, but we have kind of this loose idea of what we'd like to do with them. And the thinking is that if we could bring the system up into the town and into Lily Pond specifically for those 4 days, we would really be able to take advantage of that equipment being up here on site. So that's the good news, I guess, for our project and the council. And again, thank you very much for your time today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Sweeten, thank you very much. Any questions from the councilor? Councilor Wyanko.
Thank you very much. Thanks, David. That was a great presentation. I'm glad this program has got some legs now and moving forward. I've been working with the district over the last 3 years, getting rid of frag on district roads, and hopefully we'll move into township roads. But we're using chemicals there, though, which is okay because it's not near water. So between the 2 programs, we are getting control on the Phragmites. SSEA is here too, and maybe you should probably indicate to council what your relationship on this program is with SSEA.
Yes, for sure. So I will let SSEA speak for themselves when they come up, but effectively our program is focused on people in the water removing frag, and specifically Phragmites, and just dealing with that issue and the actual eradication of it. Severn Sound Environmental is doing all of the other invasive species all through the township, and dealing with educating the public and some control programs, helping council with control questions, how you would get rid of various things. So our program, I would say, is kind of the roll up your sleeves, get in the water and cut it out. And we work in cooperation on training and things like that with Severn Sound, and try to ensure as best we can between our organizations that we're not being redundant or overlapping each other, but that we're working cooperatively. So with Robert and Julie.
Councilor Cooper.
Thank you, David. Just a quick question. You mentioned that you were going to try and coordinate with the National Park, and did you mention that they were going to be doing the work in October?
Usually Phragmites control when we cut the Phragmites, because as Paul said, we can't, or as Councillor Wanko said, we can't use chemicals over the water. We wait till the fluorescence, like the plant has actually put all its energy up to form a flower and start to produce seed, and that's when we cut. And that happens near the end of near the end of August through September. And when we cut in October, it's still not finished kind of putting all of the energy back down into the root system, and we can still drown it. The one thing I didn't mention was the timeliness of the water levels now being about 1.5 feet above average means that when we cut it, we can flood it effectively. If we were doing this, at the end of 2012, when water level was down and you could see the entire dock at Picnic Island and things like that, we wouldn't have the same success rate because we wouldn't be able to inundate the cuttings. So as long as we can cut it and the water gets on it and it can flood it out, we can prevent that spread.
So just, so when you did, for instance, Lily Pond, when was that cut?
First week of October.
First week, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, so I thought that they were being done in August and that kind of thing.
That's when we have to optimize between when people are in the bay to help us with the community cutting and getting volunteers out. We have to optimize that program a little bit between when it's good to cut the plant and when it's good for community people to be around. If we waited until after, into September, nobody'd be here to help us with the
Yeah, I
cuttings.
was wondering.
There's a few balls we have to juggle to get the community cuts to work, so yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Jarvis?
I was involved in a small cut on our island about 4 years ago, early on in the program, and I remember we had to go in with crowbars to get the roots out. So you're saying now that flooding it afterwards effectively kills anything that remains? There's nothing that goes dormant and can come back on us?
Yes, the plant can go dormant, and the roots, the rhizomes that are still under the soil, they can go down 9 feet. So we, in our program, have never pursued cutting the root or digging the roots out. What we do instead is cut the root when most of the energy is up in the plant stock and the photosynthetic machinery hasn't, recharged the starches and sugars back up in the roots. But we leave the roots down there, and after about 3 or 4 years of successively cutting it, we can completely, remove the vigor of the plant, and it starts to drown out. Lynn Short down in Tiny Township has actually dug up some of the roots to see what happens to them, and they're just like husks that are left down there after a few years. So yeah, it does require some sustained effort. It's not a one and done program.
Well, thank you very much again.
Thank you.
And for the case of full disclosure, my daughter Kristen was one of the student ambassadors in 2016, 2017, so I'm
That is on the right
very,
track.
very familiar with the program. And in answer to your question, they tried to do a lot of the cuts in August before the head had actually flowered and spread its seeds.
Yeah.
But so that's one of the deadlines. But cutting any time of year is better than not cutting at all.
And our equipment last year was delayed because they threw a track. We were hoping to have it in the end of August, so yeah.
Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next on our list, we're going to go to the Georgian Bay Historical Society, please.
We're trying to meet another deadline.
I'll be quick. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to present something to council today about the David Milne Legacy Project. About 3 years ago, I would also like to say that I really appreciate the interest that the Township Council and staff in the past and hopefully presently have had in this project. And Mayor Kutzir, I'm very pleased that you want to attend the first meeting of our 2019 year. So about 3 years ago, the Georgian Bay Township Historical Society became aware of the historic David Milne cabin on 6 Mile Lake and became involved with an enthusiastic group of volunteers, mostly from 6 Mile, that were passionate about preserving this historic building and the history surrounding it. And if you want to look over there, this is kind of what we started with once it was moved to Port Severn. So it gives you an idea of the condition of it. Encouraged by the council, the society agreed to undertake the restoration and interpretation of David Milne's rustic cabin and legacy on 6 Mile Lake in Georgian Bay Township. We have a large group of volunteers both seasonal and permanent residents that have given hundreds, if not thousands, of volunteer hours to help accomplish what we have done to date. And I would like to point out today that we have managed to rustle up 10 of our volunteers to come and sit in the audience today on this nice winter afternoon. So I think that speaks to the enthusiasm that we have. We have at least 20 plus full-time volunteers that have been working on this project. And we've also been helped to a great deal by some township staff and several of the counselors. So very much a community project. So we have embarked in the last year, you can move that up there. We've embarked in the last year on some very successful fundraising activities, which include we publish an email newsletter with updates of our progress and sent out to our list of over 125 email addresses. We purchased the rights to 8 of Milne's paintings, had them reproduced, and sold sponsorships to them, raising $4,000. Those are the paintings that are currently hanging out in the lobby of the Township building. We planned and executed a grand fundraiser and silent auction, raising over $7,000. Received numerous cash donations from individual community members, both permanent and seasonal residents. Have continued support from area cottagers associations, and have increased our membership with active volunteers. We've also completed the following restoration projects on the cabin. And this is where Jane, she's my AV person. Anyway, we've constructed and engineered a cement foundation and moved the cabin onto its permanent site. And if any of you wonder why the cabin is facing the way it is over there, it's because it's oriented exactly as it was in its original location on 6 Mile Lake. We've removed all additions to the cabin, made structural repairs, restored and replaced original style rough pine siding, covered it with tar paper, and held in place by split saplings, which is what David Milne did. These were all items that we were able to glean off of his memoirs, which he wrote about building the cabin. Located, restored, and reinstalled vintage doors and windows in their original locations, which we were able to discover once we stripped out all the interior and the exterior. And we've begun landscaping by creating a rocky Muskoka-like berm dotted with large granite rocks, and to date we've planted over 20 native species of trees in the berm. Our goal is to have the cabin and its surroundings completed and ready for a dedication in late summer of this year. In order to accomplish this and complete this significant historic project, we project additional expenses to be approximately $20,000 and hope to accomplish the following. That's complete the landscaping around the cabin, install pathways around the cabin to allow for safe viewing, plant additional tree species around Milne's cabin that were specifically mentioned in Milne's personal memoirs, complete the interior restoration of the cabin, again based on Milne's memoirs, paintings, and photographs that we've obtained, create informational signage and storyboards surrounding the cabin, and generally on site to tell the Milne story. Get highway signage on Highway 400, create safe pathways on site to the proposed library, the Petro-Canada Service Center for safe and easy tourist access, the Port Severn Waterfront Park and the Municipal Office Complex, and plan a dedication for late summer. So the Brissett Homestead Heritage Park, which is what we call the site, includes the Brissett House and Barn, which includes our pathways to the past windows display, the first lockmaster's office from Lock 45, Port Severn, City of Dover, steamship display, and the David Milne cabin. The Georgian Bay Township Historical Society is committed to the development and enhancement of this park as an integral part of the Port Severn and Georgian Bay Township community. And the Milne Cabin is an important piece of the overall site. So the Georgian Bay Township Historical Society would like to request that Council allocate funds in the amount of $5,000 in the 2019 budget for the purpose of assisting in the restoration and interpretation of this significant township asset. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Councilors? Councilor Bocek.
Thanks for the presentation, Ron. And I'm just wondering if you could inform not only council but everybody that's watching in TV Wonderland, what is the end game for the cabin, and what are your intentions once you have the restoration completed? What will the purpose of the cabin be as far as tourism goes?
Well, right now, because of the small size of the cabin and the desire of us to preserve the original structure, it's unlikely that that you'll be able to go inside the cabin. So we're looking at viewing from the outside only. We do want to, as I had earlier said, create a pathway from the Petrocan and from the municipal office complex and the waterfront park so that people can access that. With the library so close by, we're hoping to have some programs that will be themed around the Milne Cabin. Most of the stuff at this point, we do have the gazebo for some undercover displays and things of that nature, but most of it will be outside around the Milne Cabin. So coordinating with the library, if it in fact moves to the Brissett House, and our historical displays, we're hoping that eventually this will be an area where some programs can be held for the community.
Good. Appreciate that. Thanks, Ron.
Councilor Ryanko.
Thanks, Rod. Yeah, I want to give credit also to Paul Pearson, whose property this cabin sat on for many, many years. And even though he added on to it kitchens and bedrooms and so on, he kept that one little cabin as a centerpiece to that structure. And he maintained most of that cabin. And so we were able to cut it out and then move it away. He also jealously guarded the documentation of that time. So we got that eventually. It took 3 years to get it out of him. But anyway, that helped with the information you needed to refurbish the cabin and also the interior. So I think he should be credited a lot by preserving the cabin for many, many years.
That's right, Paul, and I can add a couple other things to that in that, believe me, we took a lot of kidding and jeering when that cabin was moved there because it wasn't a pretty sight. And I joked with people when they would say to me, oh, it doesn't look good now, but when it's restored, it'll really look good. And I said, well, don't get your hopes up, because it was a very primitive cabin, but it does represent what David Milne built. And I always added that what its purpose is to tell the story of David Milne. And it's a remarkable story. And I believe it's over now. If it's not, it will be very shortly, but they have an amazing David Milne display down at the Kleinberg. And as a group, we went down and viewed that. And I didn't realize it before this, and I think a lot of people still don't realize what a significant Canadian artist he is, and the fact that he spent 6 years in this township, and many of his paintings are from scenery and that is in and around the Georgian Bay shoreline and 6 Mile Lake and Upper Severn. So his paintings do represent quite a broad area of our township. And I would also comment, Paul, with your comments about Paul Pearson preserving that when we really got into the bones of the cabin, And it was fun kind of reading his memoirs and understanding how he gathered drift logs and scrap wood to build this cabin. And then you actually, when we tore out the modern finishes on the inside and tore off the siding that had been added, and you could actually see exactly what he had done, and it is very well preserved. So, you know, I think that as we got into restoring the cabin, it became, in our eyes, even a more significant asset.
Councillor Jarvis.
Just a quick question regarding the signage on the highway that you're proposing. Is that signage just for the Milne House, or would that be signage for the whole park?
It'll probably be a, you know, I don't know if you ever dealt with MTO, but, you know, they have their rules. It'll probably be something like a museum-type sign. And while that certainly isn't what we'd love to have a great big come to our Heritage Park at Port Severn sign, but I don't think that's going to happen. It'll probably be museum.
Councillors? Well, thank you very much for your presentation, and I appreciate your sense of humor, and I have enjoyed that show down at the McMichael with regards to David Milne. I was a little disappointed that they didn't have more 6 Mile Lake pieces in it, and I think your collection that you've put together is among his best.
Well, we thought ours was better too.
Yeah, well, I agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
Georgian Bay General Hospital, please. Thank you for your patience.
Official clicker lady. Obviously, no one gets sick. Well, the important people are here, right? So my name is Tim Martin. I was a director of the hospital board for 3 years, and I'm now on the foundation board. As well, my wife and I are personal donors to GBGH. Jennifer Russell and I want to start by saying thank you for including Georgian Bay General Hospital as a recipient of funds from the Mayor's Golf Tournament for Health in 2015. The funds went to support the revitalization of our emergency department. I don't know if you've seen it, but we've got these shiny new ambulance bays, operating theaters. They've done a really nice job. And this was totaled about $6.7 million and was funded by government, community, and municipal donations such as yours. As you can see from the foil there, this area, we had 728 visits in 2017. And that does not include seasonal residents. And the reason why it doesn't is because when someone shows up off a boat or a cottage or whatever, and they come in with their new fancy OHIP card, basically that card has your permanent address. So if it's someone from Toronto, it's counted as a person from Toronto and not from here. So we can't give you the exact stats on the seasonal participation, if you will. Now, I can tell you, though, that 10% of all ED visits, emergency department visits, to Georgian Bay General Hospital are from out-of-town addresses. And that totaled about 4,500. The greatest need at Georgian Bay General Hospital is for replacement and new equipment. Now, you can see some of these numbers up here. What happens is that every year we go to the doctors, the senior staff, and say, what is it you need to do your jobs? And the current list outlines approximately $7 million. Now, I probably don't have to tell you, but hospital equipment is ridiculously expensive. And just to put it out here for those that don't know, again, governments, the Ministry of Health does not pay for any equipment at all. So the foundation of which we're from is responsible for raising the funds to buy this ridiculously equipment. And an example of that is, take for example, IV infusion pumps. Now, we have various sites around the hospital, and you have these various pumps that are mobile and so on. You can't just buy one or two. You've got to buy them all at once. This is for training, quality assurance perspectives. You know, if a nurse or whomever is trained on one, an older one, and doesn't know how to use the newer one, that's a problem. So not only is the equipment expensive, but sometimes we have to buy a lot of the same thing. Right? One time when I was came on the board, somebody mentioned something about the med carts, and I said, well, why can't we just go to Canadian Tire and buy them, right? I have them in my tools in my basement. Well, of course, there's Ministry of Health rules around that, and each cart costs thousands of dollars. You know, a cart at Canadian Tire is like $150. So, anyway, in 5 years, the hospital needs will exceed about $20 million, and that includes everything from the IT technology, which helps us better coordinate with the mothership in Barrie, and also with Aurelia. And so we basically need to make sure our technology is up to speed, and also all the beds, the vital sign machines, IV infusion pumps, and so on. So it's a big operation, and last year we submitted a letter to the council here outlining our request for $10,000 towards the critical equipment and infrastructure needs. We hope that you will join the municipalities of Penetang, Midland, and the townships of Tiny and Tay by including GBGH in your plans. So thank you for your time and consideration. We wanted to be brief, but just make reference to that $10,000 request, and happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Councillors? Councillor Jarvis.
Do you mind going back to the slide that showed the number of emergency department there? So GB Township is 3% of the population is served by GBGH, is that correct? Okay.
I should mention Jennifer here works in the foundation office, so she's very familiar with these numbers. She helps develop.
So just out of curiosity, where's the other 97% of our population go?
We don't track that, per se.
Sorry, 3% of the population served by Georgian Bay General Hospital. So Georgian Bay General Hospital serves Christian Island, serves Tiny, Tay, Midland, and Penetang, and Georgian Bay Township. So Georgian Bay Township, like the residents of this area, represent 3% of the total population served. Sorry if that wasn't clear.
Okay.
Councillor Cooper.
Just a quick question. I was a bit perplexed by the number you put up there for 2015.
Municipalities such as this, if we can get agreement for some level of funding, what we get out of that is we get to use 100% of that. Whereas the events such as this and other events, there are costs attached to them. So we end up with just using the net proceeds. So this is a very efficient and effective way of being able to address our equipment needs, equipment, beds, and so on.
So just for...
The gift that we've received, I think, from the Township of Georgian Bay.
But not...
Is money for...
So I just wanted to understand the distinction there and surface that. The other thing is that you mentioned the number of constituents, shall we say, that use your hospital. It might be useful in the future to, if you can, to be able to, on the input that you take at when a patient comes in, not only that the health card says that they're from Toronto, but do you reside seasonally in this area? So I don't know whether that would make some sense, but it would give us some statistics to work with, because I suspect the numbers are significantly higher than what your stats are showing us. Just a suggestion.
We could certainly take that to our intake folks. I'm not sure if there's some privacy issues or not, so we would have to check on that.
Councillor Hazelton.
At the risk of putting you on the spot and indicating, first of all, that I'm a new councillor, if our township hasn't given you any money since 2015, can you help me understand what you think the reasons for that have been?
You've been here longer than me, so I'm going to defer that one.
Your Worship, if it's possible, I just wanted to provide clarity that the SEGBA did provide $167,000 over 5 years to GBGH through their 4-year commitment to the golf tournament that they held at Bon Air. I just thought I'd add that piece of information just so that Councillor Cooper doesn't think that the hospital is completely being abandoned by residents of the municipality.
Ms. Kennard.
Thank you, Your Worship. I can answer that question, but I think it's a better discussion had during budget deliberations than rather than put these poor people on the hot spot at the moment. But certainly it will come up again in budget deliberations, if that's fair.
I would just say we have presented to council previously. I think there were a few different reasons that I'm sure you guys can chat about. But we have come before to ask. It just hasn't come to fruition.
Councillor Wojcik.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. The GBGH is really effectively used by a lot of people in the Township of Georgian Bay, especially the southern part of Georgian Bay. But we do rely on the hospital in Perry Sound to service the northern end, Aurelia Soldiers Memorial for our constituents that live up on the Severn River and up that way. So we are divided here as well too, and know that as much as we like to support the GBGH as much as possible, we do have to look at other avenues too, but I'm agreeant with the support is needed.
Yeah, I was aware of that, and frankly, I didn't really want to bring it up, but we were aware of that we are one of several that you have to deal with. So.
Right.
I would say, if I may add one quick thing, I know those hospitals that you speak of are currently being supported by the District of Muskoka hospital funding as well, whereas GBGH is not. So that might be for consideration as well, that we are not currently being supported through the hospital levy, I think that the District of Muskoka collects.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's very important.
Councillor Ryanko.
I do think that in the last year or so, I think the district did divert some money to the Georgian Bay Hospital from the district.
I think Georgian Bay General Hospital was added to the list of hospitals eligible to apply for the funding.
Okay, at the district level.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I don't think the application process is again until 2020, if I understand correctly.
I have two questions. One is, if you could please confirm whether you received anything from the district or not, it would be greatly appreciated, or what your expectations might be, because that is a concern of us here at the township. And secondly, Mr. Martin, you referred to the mothership in Barrie. What is the relationship between your hospital and the Barrie Hospital? Is there anything formal, or is that just where you sometimes end up being the triage unit for the Barrie Hospital?
What it boils down to is this. The Barrie RVH is a very large hospital, as you know, and we actually tap into and share their computer systems. So that's one main interface. Also, too, we do send patients to them where necessary, and we also have a relationship with Aurelia Soldiers, too, where we send patients to them about problematic obstetrics issues. We also send down to Newmarket. So we tend to be an acute care center, but then we cannot be everything to everyone, just because we're, 105 beds, 110 beds. So we're not a large hospital.
But, so in other words, there's no, I'll call it formal relationship.
No.
Not like you're a branch hospital or anything like that.
No, I mean, when I use the term mothership, it's sort of,
well,
I'm sorry, a little bit of slang on that.
No, I understood that, but I just wanted to confirm.
Right.
Well, I say thank you very much for your presentation and greatly appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Next on our list is Southeastern Georgian Bay Chamber of Commerce, or C.o.W if you prefer.
Good afternoon. My name is Ronnie Carley. I'm the Secretary Treasurer with the C.o.W Chamber of Commerce. And Linda Young, the President, wasn't able to attend, so she's asked me to present to you today. So I'm going to be reading off from a letter that we have sent out to the councils. And so this will be my presentation today. As you're aware, Southeast Georgian Bay, which is known as C.o.W Chamber of Commerce, proudly services the areas from McTier in the north around the southeast region of Georgian Bay, including the towns and villages of Port Severn, Honey Harbour, Coldwater, Severn Falls, Wabasheen, and stretching west towards Victoria Harbour and east towards Aurelia. Our objective is to improve the social, economic, and environmental conditions in these areas and to help our vital small businesses to improve tourism. We are currently work behalf of 151 members located as follows. There are 83 in the Georgian Bay Township, 30 in Severn, 17 in Tate Township, and 21 elsewhere, such as Barrie, Midland, Aurelia, and Muskoka. The Chambers has achieved the following in 2018. Achieving was well beyond our goal of our golf tournament for Georgian Bay Hospital. We raised $167,000 in 5 years. For the 5th year annual golf tournament, in addition to the GBGH Foundation, we included the Wendat community programs to support the residents for low-income senior of Muskoka, Simcoe, and raised $32,000 in total. We continue to enhance our relationship with major service clubs in our area, specifically Baxter Snow Riders, Baxter 7 ATV Riders, 6 Star Snow Riders, Georgian Bay Township Historical Society, McTier Community Development Association, Honey Harbor Community Cooperative, 6 Mile Lake Cottagers Association, and a Coldwater Heritage Mill Foundation. C.o.W provided support and resources as well as promoted Witches Walk, Santa Claus Parade, Coldwater Mill, and Canadiana Museum events, and Coldwater Duck Race. We built an information kiosk at the Petro-Canada Travel Centre, which is especially well utilized in the general public. This new kiosk has caught the attention of businesses wishing to join the Chamber for promotional distribution of brochures and business cards throughout the kiosk. What the Chamber does to support our small businesses. We distributed a great number of information brochures in our information kiosk at the Petro-Canada Travel Centre and direct tourists and others to area businesses, events, exhibits, and attractions such as Georgian Bay Island Nation Park, 6 Mile Lake Provincial Park, the Big Chute Marine Railway in Loch 45, the SS Keewatin, Y Marsh Sainte Marie Mount Huron, and the Tay Shore Trail, the Village of Coldwater, the Canadiana Museum, Coldwater Farmers Market, the Coldwater Youth Off Trail, as well as Georgian Bay Biosphere Reserve. We produce an annual business directory and visitor's guide with a distribution of 12,000 copies locally, as well at important shows in the GTA, such as the Toronto Boat Show and the Snowmobile Show, and through tourist information centers across Ontario. We produce a high-quality, full-color tear-off map of our area, showcasing communities in our service area along the Highway 400 corridor. This popular map makes it easier for tourists and others to find our businesses and to make use of as many of our member services as possible. We have a highly accessed website. We have been developing social media marketing, such as Facebook and Twitter, employing promotional strategies, informing our readers of our events, workshops, and other news, as well as those events and workshops which are hosted locally by others that benefit our members and others in our various locales. We provide networking functions such as the meet and greet and business after 5. We have business award program, and we participate in local events in the 3 townships we serve. For 2019, we are planning to achieve the following. With your help and assistance, C.o.W is planning the following events and initiatives. Organizing and sponsoring the 6th annual C.o.W Golf Tournament for 2 important local institutions that benefit all of the permanent and seasonal residents in the 3 townships we serve. We will continue to provide tourism and promotional services at our kiosk in the Petro-Canada Travel Centre. And this and the creation of further marketing plans, we require additional staff resources, including a summer student, to help us in our tourism initiatives. Producing our annual directory, an updated detailed area map to point the way to our businesses, events, and exhibits. Promote local events such as Canada Day, Steampunk Festival, Witches Walk, Santa Claus Parade, Coldwater Mill and Canadiana Museum events, and Coldwater Duck Race, CP Holiday Train, and many others that draw visitors to the area. In these lean economic times, plus the fact that C.o.W is a small chamber, we find it necessary to seek financial assistance from the municipalities that we serve in order to make sure our great services can continue to be offered to our many small business members and to foster tourism and increased economic activities in our area. Based on a membership in a Township of Severn and anticipated growth in members, we are seeking a subsidy of $3,000 for the year of 2019. So thank you for your consideration, and C.o.W sincerely wants to improve the business's atmosphere, business successes, and tourism throughout our truly unique area.
Thank you very much. Councillors, Councillor Cooper.
Just a couple of questions. Thank you for the presentation. First, can you tell me what sort of financial support you're presently receiving from the District of Muskoka to help operate the kiosk at the Petro-Canada?
We split that half and half of what cost they support a summer student, as well as from Muskoka. And then we also have to support a summer student, so it takes 2 students to be able to operate between the schedules and the hours that they support. Plus, they also gave us financial support as well.
And that is how much?
It was $5,000.
Okay. Secondly, I'm just doing this from memory, but has the Township of Georgian Bay not been supporting the Chamber of Commerce over the last 4 years to the tune of $5,000 a year?
I believe last year was $3,000 as well. That's as long as I've been on with the Chamber, so I can't go back historically too much further. No?
It's been 5,000.
I think it was 5,000 for the past 4 years. I'm curious.
Why we're asking 3? I guess we're obviously have to always streamline our budgets, and we feel that 3,000 is what we're going to need. There's also not a lot of huge events on our tablet. Let's face it, for 2019, it's not as if we have any big events that we need to support.
And finally, I just wanted for clarification, I recall looking up the Chamber of Commerce and what sort of its fundamental mandate is. I was checking with the Chamber, or whatever it is, the overarching organization, and your primary purpose is a marketing organization for commercial enterprises in this township. Is that correct?
And tourism.
Sorry?
And tourism.
But yes, but marketing for tourism organizations or any commercial enterprise.
Right.
That would be in tourism or servicing or whatever. Your primary purpose is to market.
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bocek, then Councillor Jarvis.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation, Ronnie. I know it was kind of unexpected and you took over for Linda. You did a good job. Can you let council and staff know where your other funding comes from? Do you receive funding from Severn Township or Tay Township or some of the other townships where you draw your clientele from?
Yeah, so primarily Muskoka, Georgian Bay, Severn. Tay, unfortunately last year was the first year they did not support us. We are presenting to them again. I believe from the stories I heard, it was just because of the change of council that we didn't get it last year. And that's only $1,000 that we asked for from them, because we're just at the tip of the Tay.
Okay, and with the funding that you receive from different municipalities, is that funding basically shared? And what I mean by shared is you don't take it and buy lunches with it. Do you use it for sponsoring events or doing things? Maybe you could inform us on what you spend the money on that you fundraise for.
Yes, well obviously we have a budget that we have to adhere by, and it is publicly presented to all the members. We had released a partial budget end of October when we had our AGM, and the formal one I'm to sign with our accountant this Friday, so I have to still formally sign that. But basically, you know, yes, we have one paid employee. We do have to pay rent in where we are located as well, and equipment cost and professional fees, because we do have an accountant on board. So we do have to have allowance for that, and of course, we have to employ a summer student on our side of chambers. And then, of course, any events that we have to be able to contribute towards.
Okay, so it's basically to cover shortfalls. You're looking for funding to cover shortfalls in your budget?
Yeah, like we're obviously a nonprofit organization, so our plan is to always try to balance out equally and not make money.
Thank you.
Councillor Jarvis, followed by Councillor Cooper.
In your notation here, deputation, it says, we continue to enhance our relationship with major service clubs. What does it mean to enhance your relationship? What are you doing with those service clubs in order to enhance your relationship with them?
Well, obviously, we are formally involved through networking, and we attempt to participate, whether it's voluntarily. We offer e-blast communication, so if they do have different events that they wish to announce, we do share that with all our members in the community.
Okay, thank you. I can come back.
Councillor Cooper.
Just to follow up on Councillor Bocek's questions, and I wondered if you, in order for our budget deliberations, could provide us with your most recent funding that you've received from all the other townships, so we can see what the story is.
I can get that followed up for you.
If you could get that to our council for budget purposes, that would be helpful. I thought it was a good question. Thank you.
Councillor Jarvis, you had another question?
Yeah, just one quick one. I see you do sponsor a number of different events. Do these events organizers come to you, or do you go to them? Or is it a combination of both? I mean, if somebody wanted to seek funding and saw that C.o.W did things like this, could they approach C.o.W
They
to ask
most
for funding?
often approach us, and then we do vote on it.
Thank you.
Seeing no other hands, I'll say thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you for your time
Thank
as
you.
well. Thank you.
Next on our list, Severn Sound Environmental Association. I'm going to declare a 5-minute bio break because apparently there's some need.
spots.
So,
It's not happening. Anyways. We'll be lucky to get out.
Councillor Wyanko?
You have a gavel, bang it.
Should I use it?
Yes, that's what you do.
Now I got your attention.
Right.
that works.
I'll have to remember that. Darn
I'm
computer.
networking. So do this
Well,
yourself.
of course you are. But
Our 5 minutes became 7. That's not bad. Anyway, thank you for your patience. If you wouldn't mind proceeding.
Absolutely. Thank you, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor, members of council, staff, and remaining members of the audience. I know it's really big behind me, and hopefully it won't be overwhelming. I'm Julie Cayley. I'm the Executive Director with the Severn Sound Environmental Association. I'm going to try to go through our slides quickly. I know 5 minutes, and I know you've got a fairly significant slide package in front of you. I wanted to start by saying it was really great to see some of the council before Christmas at our open house, and our reception staff really appreciate seeing folks out and being able to interact with the councils that we're working for. Apparently I'm not a good multitasker. I forgot about changing my slides. Our watershed, for those of you who are familiar, it's about 1,000 kilometers squared, a really unique transition area between Limestone and Shield, and includes 8 municipalities that are draining out into Severn Sound proper. SSEA, as we're known, has been your Joint Municipal Services Board since 2009. As the Executive Director, I report to a board of the 8 municipal members, and a big thank you to Councillor Wyanko, who's been dedicated to our board for a few years now. We're also the Source Protection Authority for the area under the Ontario Clean Water Act, which requires communities to create and carry out a plan to protect sources of municipal drinking water. With your core funding, your township has access to a wide variety of expertise and skill sets with our 7 full-time and currently 3 contract staff. And our services focus around our expertise in water quality, GIS, natural heritage, and now invasive species as well. 2018 was a very big year for the SSEA, including significant moves for us. We moved our offices and our treasury services to Tay Township, Port McNicoll, as well as a new strategic plan. And you have this in your package, the activities, the direct cost, and some of the leveraged benefits to your township as well. I'm going to go into probably what's most interesting to folks and touch on some of the key activities that happened in 2018, some of the results from those. Open water monitoring is one of our strengths. It's what we've been doing since the beginning of our existence in the early 1990s in Severn Sound. It's bi-weekly, ice-free for nutrients, basic chemistry, algae, zooplankton, temperature, conductivity, a bunch of things. We do this at 3 locations in your township, North and South Bays and Honey Harbor. Full results usually come in the middle of our year, so probably this month for our lab results to fully come in. In terms of what we're seeing, we're staying under the original remedial action plan targets for total phosphorus, with the exception of South Bay, which remains elevated. Targets are not being met anywhere in the open water right now for water clarity, which is an indicator that there's probably issues with algae, which we are seeing out, not just in our stations in Honey Harbor, but out in the bay as well. And our science person thinks that's likely related to, right now, to temperature changes that we're seeing in the water. North and South Bays, bottom water oxygen depletion is continuing, although the oxygen content at the bottom waters of North Bay has been gradually increasing in recent years, so that's good news. We did do some investigative sampling work in 2018 at one location in Macy's Bay and one in Oak Bay. Again, we're still getting results in for that and doing analysis, but at present, nothing is standing out as different than other stations. They're similar to our long-term stations. We also are part of a provincial water quality monitoring program on rivers in the watershed. Actually, our team is out today sampling those rivers. It's a provincial network. Port Severn, the Severn River is one of those stations. We, again, have seen no changes in total phosphorus in that station, so that's good news. What we do see happening, which is happening across the province in all rivers, is a dramatic increase in chloride concentrations, though. I also wanted to mention that this summer we worked with Steve Holden, just supporting Steve Holden, a young fellow doing some work on Gloucester Pool as well. We had some extra lab load we were able to help support him in his project with. We're also doing some work on fish habitat. We finished a fish habitat suitability map for the watershed, aid municipal planning. We've also been working with the Trent Severn Waterway. They've asked us to consider continuing to work with them on a management plan that they'll be doing with us in the Ministry of Natural Resources on that spawning shoal in particular. Stewardship programming has always been a significant area for us that we obviously use our investment in. Community tree planting, we're still looking for sites for 2019. And as well as tree distribution, which is a program happening right now where people order seedlings we do mass bulk ordering so we can get those seedlings at a reduced cost. Risk management services, so those include looking at significant threats verification, reviews of proposals and inquiries specific to preventing future threats around your municipal drinking water sources. And currently for 2018, as of 2018, there are no risk management plans required in your township. Invasive species, as was mentioned earlier, our program is a bit different in that we don't focus just on Phragmites. We're looking at the variety of invasives that may or may not currently or in the near future be an issue for your municipality. And we were pleased to have Georgian Bay Township join us partway through the year last year in this program, and really do hope that you'll continue to do so. The program has been successful enough for us at Severn Sound that it's going to become part of our core business as we move forward. Some of the specifics happened in Georgian Bay in the end of the year that you joined last year included things like aquatic invasive plant monitoring in Gloucester Pool and holding a Eurasian water milfoil training workshop. So our request this year, the total includes again the core funding that you have a chart that shows the core funding that we ask each municipality, each of the 8 municipalities for, as well as the ongoing Honey Harbor water quality monitoring work, as well as the invasive species program again this coming year. Just as I mentioned, risk management services you see on here is a 0. That is paid for by the District of Muskoka, and the tree distribution program is of no cost. Usually staff from your municipality help in kind to support the program in terms of tree distribution. So for our work plan items coming forward into 2019, you can see the list here. Obviously the things that we've always done, the water quality pieces will continue. We'll be focusing on releasing the new strategic plan and helping show folks that we are working towards those goals, and continuing to discuss the merger of the Severn Sound Environmental Association and Sustainable Severn Sound, who will be speaking after us on the agenda. So thank you for that. Hopefully I've stuck to my time. I didn't mean to mention, I do have with me 50% of the audience behind me. So Dave Ritchie, who's on our Source Water Protection Committee and a previous board vice chair, as he's also on our newly formed Agriculture Advisory Committee, and Robert Canning, who is our invasive species specialist / guru, who we're very fortunate to have and we hope to be able to keep. And I have also left our new strategic plan for those of you who may or may not have already had a copy, and our most recent audited annual report as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
First of all, thank you for the presentation, and I certainly did enjoy attending your event in Wybridge. I think I have that right, not Wydale. Wybridge, and a very good event. I just have a couple of quick questions. The SSEA, was it founded in 2009?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Cooper. The Joint Municipal Services Board was founded in 2009. I believe the SSEA itself was prior to that, closer to, I believe, 2004, as we were moving out of being a remedial action plan area of concern. That was a federal provincial government designation.
Okay, so Severn Sound was funded by the federal, you're saying, and provincial government up until 2009 solely, and then subsequent to that, that's when you got the support from a variety of municipalities for the last 10 years, or coming up to 10 years, is that correct?
Through you, Your Worship, close-ish. I'd have to go back into some of our history and look at the actual dates and numbers. I believe, I've just got a couple notes here. The partnership agreement itself, so we weren't a municipal services board, but it says 2003. And that's when we were also I think we were closer to year 2000 that we were delisted as a Great Lakes area of concern. And so up to that time, most of the funding would have been from the federal government and the provincial government specific to meeting the area of concern delisting requirements, which were mostly phosphorus related at the time and habitat. And then one of the joys of delisting is that the money delists with you.
So just a couple of other quick observations. So essentially, our funding's been there for about 10 years. You've been around for about maybe almost 20 years or just under. And my sense is that Severn Sound has transitioned significantly to the positive over the period of time. Is that correct?
For your worship, I would say so, yes. I worked for us in the 90s, so I'm feeling pretty good about where it's landed at this point.
So the objective of the organization was to clean up Severn Sound, and a lot of that has been accomplished. It looks like the work that you do now, some of it has moved somewhat inland, shall we say, as opposed to what you were doing 10 and 15 years ago. Is that also correct?
Through you, your worship, not exactly. In the early days, so the areas of concern were designated actually in the 70s and 80s. And so the work that began at that point in the 80s and 90s was actually whatever it took to delist. So for us, that was our agriculture community was right first at the table, doing a lot of work within the landscape. Our focus more recently has been A, to make sure that those delisting requirements that were met are maintained, and B, to make sure that we're watching to ensure that we aren't sliding back in any places. As you know, there's a lot of growth pressure on this area, a lot of development pressure, and making sure we're working with our communities to maintain the great progress and the investment that was made, and continue to have a community that, I mean, obviously is very dependent on water quality, and that we help make sure that's there.
Final question. So looking at the numbers here, we're contributing 44,000 plus 15,000 or so. Have I got that right? But I thought I saw a total of 70,000. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So that's what your request is this year, $70,000.
That's correct. So the 44 is the core. The it's 18, which is the Honey Harbor survey specifically, and then 7,500 for the invasive species.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Jarvis and then Councillor Wyanko.
So we just talked about the health of Severn Sound itself. Are there any plans? I can't remember when I was at the session back earlier last year on monitoring microfiber infiltration into Severn Sound area.
Through you, your worship, that's a really great question. We've actually worked with a previous presenters organization as well as the Georgian Bay Biosphere Reserve in the past to try to create, we created an application to the federal government to do a joint piece of work, all of us, to do citizen science and include looking at microfibers. Unfortunately, that was not funded. So we have our scientist, we have one scientist on staff, is really eager to get into doing some of that work, particularly monitoring to see what level of issue that might be. So we're hoping this year in some of our funding proposals that we'll find a way to do some research work in that area.
Okay.
Just one other, stormwater runoff is another issue for a lot of people. Is there anything you're doing there?
For your worship, in our new strategic plan, that was identified by most of our municipalities as an emerging area where they would like us to provide some support, either in stormwater review or in low-impact development research. And so we have some connections to our neighboring conservation authorities who are really leading the way in some of that work, and we're hoping to do some workshops this year with our municipal partners. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope I don't speak out of term as a board member, but isn't this year the year we're supposed to be negotiating a memorandum of understanding with all the various municipalities?
Through you, your worship. Thank you, Councillor Wyanko. No, you're not. It's, it's, the memorandum of understanding that the municipalities have signed is a ongoing, no need to renew memorandum. It's the financial agreement that would be new. And you're correct, the new 5-year agreement. So we're in an interim year at this point, and just had a conversation about this, that the plan is to create another 5-year financial plan so that we and our municipal partners have a better understanding of what the expectations are going to be, what your needs are, and what we're going to need moving forward.
And just to be clarified, because I'm just trying to keep our own council involved here. So you're working through C.o.W on that, and then I guess it would come to council, and I guess the mayor has to eventually sign it. Is that the process we're working on?
Your worship, that would be what we would like to be doing. We are at the stage right now of drafting what we understand our needs are. As you know, we've moved locations. We have some different rent requirements. So we're making sure we have our ducks in a row, so to speak, and then we'll be coming out to staff at first, the CAOs and the treasurers, hopefully, to help work with making sure that what your municipal needs are fit in that plan before we come to council. Absolutely. Thank you.
Council informed that something coming down the pipeline.
Yes, thank you.
I see no hands. I have one question, if I may. I've heard stories numerous times about some of our area municipalities being unable to handle their sewage volumes in times of large storms. Is that anything that you are monitoring?
Thank you, Your Worship. You'd be speaking specifically of a municipality that has a stormwater treatment plant municipal sewage treatment plant and stormwater potential bypasses. Yes. So Penetang, Midland, and Tay are the 3 municipalities in our area that have the potential to be in those situations. Penetang in particular, any bypass is actually treated already, so it's not a raw sewage bypass. We do work with them. Most of our municipalities are fairly significant level of treatment already, but are all working on making sure that where they can reduce any of those potential bypasses, so we are working with them on that. I would expect to see something in the near future, and probably the next 6 months, those municipalities are likely going to go to more real-time reporting so that people can go online and see, rather than have to go look up if there's been a bypass.
Thank you. Seeing no other raised hands, I'll say thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Last, and I want to say certainly not least, Sustainable Severn Sound, please.
Escape.
Guy.
The PDF, so you're gonna have to leaf through. I don't think that thing will work. Oh,
Okay, so good afternoon, Honorable Mayor Cote, members of council, staff, and the public. So happy New Year to everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to attend today. My name is Tracy Roxborough. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator for Sustainable Severn Sound. I'm the overall project manager responsible for the day-to-day operations of the program. And also today I have with me Victoria Ervik, who is our climate change coordinator, who will be taking over my role as of February. So she'll be your point of contact for all things related to climate change and your PCP program commitment. And she comes to us with over 6 years of municipal experience, a Master's of Environment and Sustainability from Western, a Bachelor of Arts and Environment from Guelph, and we are very lucky to have her on board and have had her on board since October 2017. So very quickly today, I'll go through, I can leave this presentation for you for review if you'd like. It does have some links in it, but we'll just speak quickly about our services, about the commitment that the township did make to the Partners for Climate Protection Program in May 2018, the next steps for us in 2019, and as well the benefits for your municipality in being part of the of the Sustainable Severn Sound project. So we are a regional sustainability program. I know that there's a few that are probably new and have seen this for the first time. We are supported by 7 municipalities within the area, including yourselves. Each of these municipalities provides an equal share of the contribution, with those funds being operating in nature. So for example, per the letter in your package dated November 30th, we are requesting $10,200 for our services in 2019. These funds are further leveraged to access other grants from external government and non-governmental organizations, and we've been successful in 2018-2019 acquiring external funding from those external organizations noted at the bottom. Each of the municipal members, such as yourself, and the agencies noted on the screen provide council or board appointed representation to the Sustainability Committee, which does guide our work. So our organization works with our municipal partners and our Sustainability Committee to educate our municipal partners and their communities on practices and policies, advance the adoption of these practices within your municipalities through information services, and as well advocate for sustainable practices that impact your municipality per the direction of your municipality and our committee. We are specifically focused on enhancing the knowledge and understanding of climate change within your municipality by integrating those considerations within your operations through the adoptions of policy and laying the foundational pieces for long-term climate action. To achieve this, we do conduct research, provide reports and recommendations to our partners. For example, reports on the impact of legislation on your municipality, examples of low-cost greenhouse gas mitigation actions, and examples of policy and language used successfully in other municipalities that can then be used in your municipality. We are also here to identify funding for you, help develop those applications through letters of support, and providing greenhouse gas data and analysis upon request. So as I mentioned, in May 2018, your township did commit to join the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Partners for Climate Protection program through a council resolution. You joined 350 other municipalities across Canada in addressing climate change through a 5-milestone framework. As part of that, the township did appoint Councillor Wienko and Mr. Popovich at that time as your point of contact to the PCP program. And at that time, Sustainable Severn Sound was also approved as your township's associate member to that program, responsible for meeting the program membership requirements. So Sustainable Severn Sound did create a regional plan for you, which is available on your website, as well available in your front foyer for members of your community to review. That town, as well as the municipal level climate change action plan that we're developing for you right now, does connect to your strategic direction number 3 with both your corporate and community strategic plans in reference to a potential energy plan, renewable energy sources, air pollution, and potential impacts from climate change. As well, the work that we're doing does connect to your municipality's conservation demand management plan, which does require updating in 2019, as well as your asset management plan, which I know some work has been done in terms of a climate policy that is required, but this work will also connect to that. We've also, in terms of your official plan and your design guidelines, alternative energy and community improvement, this will also connect with that moving forward, as well as the district's official plan regarding section C3 and climate change considerations within their plan. And plus, the work we are doing fulfills the requirements for milestone 2 and 3 of your PCP program commitment, which I'll speak to very briefly here. So we did complete your milestone 1 for you, and your achievement is now listed on the PCP member map and also featured in the summer issue of the PCP electronic newsletter that was distributed to over 350 municipalities across Canada. This information was also included in your township newsletter that went out to your residents. As well, there was a letter that was sent to your council from FCM recognizing your commitment to climate change and your achievement of milestone 1. So I'll just speak a little bit more to this because I know it's a lot of information. So we are right now developing a municipal level climate change action plan for your municipality, as we are doing for our other 7 municipalities. So this plan, in order to be considered under or accepted by FCM, does include the inventory. So there's a corporate inventory as well as a community-based inventory of your greenhouse gas emissions, which is led by a PCP protocol, which is an internationally recognized standard. So it contains that as well as actions to reduce greenhouse gases and the associated energy use, when those tasks will be implemented and by whom, and what the expected reduction of those actions will be. So moving forward, we are going to be working with your municipality to have this plan reviewed first by your staff, potentially your C.o.W. We have to connect with her about how she would recommend moving forward. And then also facilitating comment from additional staff. Pardon me, I just repeated myself. Also continuing to provide information support services to your municipality in terms of climate change and taking action in terms of the PCB program. We'll also be reviewing documents and recommending ways that you can reduce your greenhouse gases to then contribute to the plan that we're producing for you. And as well, we'll continue to meet the reporting requirements per your membership commitment and submit updates on your progress to FCM as required. So quickly now as well, the benefits of being part of Sustainable Severn Sound. So municipalities across Ontario, based on the conversations we'd had with others and our research, are spending approximately $40,000 to $50,000 on climate change action plans. So yours is being created for a fraction of that cost, so you are saving money there. A lot of funding agencies now as well, as funding is becoming even more competitive, they either require a climate change action plan for eligibility, or they will look more favorably on municipalities that have one in place that can further support their actions. Also, by taking formal action in response to climate change, the township is building credibility and enhancing public trust in your commitment to this challenge. And as I mentioned, it does align with policy within your municipality, as well as requirements legislated and recommended that will be coming up in 2019. And those, the plan being prepared will help to meet those expectations moving forward for the township. So to summarize, we do offer a unique service that is not offered by other environmental agencies in our area. So as one of the 7 municipal partners, the township does benefit from being part of a collaborative model that has received recent regional, provincial, and national recognition for our work on municipal climate change and greenhouse gas mitigation planning. We'll also be presenting on Monday in partnership with the Georgian Bay Biosphere Reserve on our work, featuring the efforts that have been made by your township. As well, we've presented to the Muskoka Watershed Council, the district, in regards to our work and trying to work closely with them to ensure that we're working on a similar framework. We also provide associate member services for your municipality as members of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Partners for Climate Protection Program per the approval of your CEO. And we also provide the expertise in climate change planning that can be accessed upon request by you and your staff, as there is no equivalent position in your municipality, and we are here to provide that to help fill that gap. So I did want to recognize, of course, your ongoing contribution. We do sincerely appreciate it, as well as the contribution of staff, Ms. Kennard, as well as Councillor Wianco, for supporting climate action within municipality. And we look forward to working with you in the PC program and in the implementation of your proposed climate change action plan when approved in 2019. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you had any at this time.
Councillor Cooper.
Guy with all the questions. Thank you for your presentation, and just a couple of quick ones. Did I overhear you say at the outset of your presentation that each township provides you with $10,000? Is that correct?
That is correct, yes, Councillor Cooper. So it's an equal shared contribution. It's not based on land size or mass, just based on, we provide the same services to each municipality regardless of size or location.
I see. And even though the budgets in some of those other townships are far larger than ours?
Based on our capacity, we're providing the services, we believe, at the same level to each municipality. And we're not, yes, I guess that's, yes, I hope that answers your question.
So I have one other observation, and maybe you could respond to this, because the same would apply to Severn Sound Environmental. And that is that our waterfront just on the coast of Georgian Bay in Severn Sound is about 25% of our waterfront. We're not covering the rest of it. Is that correct?
Councillor Cooper, well, actually, we're working on a separate, we're not, Sustainable Severn Sound actually doesn't, per our services that we outlined, is not working with specifically water or waterfront properties. We provide, our intention is to provide your municipality with support to implement your climate change action plan and thereby reduce your costs, reduce your greenhouse gases, improve air quality. It's more of an approach in terms of the energy side. In terms of Severn Sound Environmental Association, they're your agency that would handle waterfront, water quality, that. So we're
helping you sort of tell our story. Is that what you're saying too? Is that what I heard? In other words, to sell to, I got the impression that you were saying by being a member and supporting you, that it would help us in other ways, even financially. Is that correct?
That is correct. So this work is, as we said, being done, in other municipalities very consistently. They either have a sustainability coordinator role or a climate change coordinator, such as the district had just recently hired a climate change coordinator. Your municipality at this current time doesn't have a position like that, although I know that you do undertake environmental initiatives within your municipality. But what we're trying to do is provide kind of that additional capacity for your municipality and supporting you through identifying opportunities and then how to then implement those opportunities.
Thank you.
Councillor Hazelton.
Again, thank you for your presentation. Given that we are arguably 85 or 90% water-based or seasonal residents, with very little commercial, construction, probably the trucks of the township generate the most carbon gas. Do you have any statistics for our township on the sources of carbon gases attributable to the seasonal resident population versus the non, and what strategies you are suggesting for the seasonal resident population?
So this is, we have lots of statistics. We have lots of data based on those sectors, and areas that you're speaking of. The way that the inventories were produced, they were produced, as I mentioned during the presentation, through the internationally recognized PCP, or Partners for Climate Protection Protocol. So that ensures that what we're doing is standardized across all municipalities, and that we're using a similar, the same way to do this, so that we can compare, we can look at other municipalities. It gives a standard for creating these carbon inventories. As in terms of your seasonal population versus your permanent, we're not able to see exactly how those are, divided between those two types of residents, but we are able to see where the majority of your emissions are coming from in the community, because we did do a community and a corporate inventory. The community inventory, of course, is transportation. As you know, we're very reliant on our vehicles in this area. The second is residential, because that is in reference to, of course, energy use to heat our homes, that type of thing. But in terms of moving forward, we do have an implementation plan for our regional plan that we created that is available, as I said, on your website and in the foyer. That does have kind of an overview of the data that you're speaking of. So it does actually show each of the 7 municipalities and where the greenhouse gas emissions and carbon emissions are coming from within their respective communities and municipalities. And then the plan that we're creating for your municipality respectively goes more into depth in those specific emissions that you're speaking of. We do have that in draft form at this time. But in terms of the regional plan, there is 18 specific recommendations. Some of those are for the community, some of them are for corporate or municipal operations. Moving forward, based on our capacity, we're a 2-person organization. We're focusing right now on helping your municipality operationalize your plan respectively for your municipality, and then looking maybe in the future to see how we can further support those community-based emissions reductions.
Thank you for that. I would be very interested in understanding what you have laid out specifically for our township, where I think you said you're working on things. Things like the water access community is generally a 6-month max time window. And it's a very different community than most of the other communities. So I'd be interested in understanding how you have reflected the uniqueness of our township in this so-called standardized plan, which my first gut is standardized plan we probably don't fit into because we're so unique, but I'm very interested in understanding what you've done there.
Of course, and we'd be more than happy to either meet with you or come back to council. We were just speaking about that and giving some further information on your respective plan. Moving forward, as part of the PCP program, your council will be requested to sign off on that plan. So of course, we're going to give you ample opportunity to review what's in it. In terms of your uniqueness, we understand that. We also have other municipalities such as the Township of Tiny, not quite the same, of course, because of the way that your residences are set up and how people access those. But we understand that there is a significant increase in seasonal populations. And, you know, we have to, of course, even when we're looking at these plans, we have to be very strategic, and we have been. There's a process that we've been supported by FCM and going through about, let's look at realistically. We need these to be realistic and achievable. We know that we need to do something. What can we do? But we also need to look at what we have influence over and what is actually going to, you know, what we can actually achieve. And some of them, you know, there's just not a lot you can do, but some of them, other sectors, there are. So I can speak to you more later or provide more information about what those recommendations are. But as I said, our focus moving forward into, you know, 2019, 2020, and in terms of our capacity, we're really focused on trying to support capacity within your municipality and focusing on what your municipality can control. And then further to that in the future, looking at what we can support the community in. But you know, a lot of those community emissions are really driven by energy service provider incentives, by adoption of renewable energy, by you know, different options like that. But in terms of our capacity, what we can assist your municipality with is in developing this plan, helping align with legislation, providing you information services, and helping you move the recommendations on the municipal level forward.
Is this program that you're, the service you're providing, is this like a mandated program?
No, it is, Your Worship, it's not mandatory. It's just a best practice. It's something that is a recognized framework that allows municipalities to identify a starting point and therefore track their efforts over time. It's something that is proven, that is, you know, as I said, there's over 350 members across Canada. And within that, demonstrating that leadership more than anything, but working together to really address this challenge that we're facing moving forward.
And I gather from this that a significant number of municipalities are putting in this program or going through the steps that you've outlined.
Correct.
And that we, in effect, as a township, are hiring you as, let me call it, the consultants delivering this, as opposed to having our own employee or employees do it, as I imagine many of the larger municipalities are. Hence your $45,000 versus $10,000 comparison.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you for restating that. That is...
Well, it's the way my poor little mind works.
No, I know it's a lot of information in a short amount of time, but that's what we're trying to do, is provide you a service that you therefore do not have to pay someone else to do for an exorbitant amount of money, or bring on a full-time staff person when it may not be required as a full-time position. But it is moving you forward, and doing so for a very reduced cost than you would pay elsewise.
Well, thank you very much, and appreciate your patience, having to wait till last to present to us, and we all thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to meet new councillors as well as new mayor, and we look forward to working with you. Have a great day.
So after all that, I'd have to ask Councillor Wayenko. Councillor Wayenko, I believe you have a deputation to present. Are you ready for that? Okay.
Okay, I'm standing up here today not as a councillor, but as a private citizen. And this program that we've been running, it's probably getting close to 20 years. We started back in 1998 with some bacteria work that we started on our lake. And then I met Carl Schaefer and adopted his methodology for water quality sampling for the inland lakes, and been going ever since. So the bacteria work is 20 years, probably inland water quality 15 years plus. Okay, there we go. So this is a fairly important slide, because basically what I do with the equipment I have is I start off near the end. I'll show you who's doing what in the way of water quality, but what was concerned to a lot of associations that I got involved with was what happens to our water quality over the summertime. In other words, by the fall, have we had an impact on our water quality as a result of activities, both natural and man-made activities. So if you look at this slide here, the first one on the left-hand side is what we normally would find in early spring or late fall, where you have temperature and oxygen almost the same from top to bottom. That's because of the turnover of the water. And so if you were going to sample a lake to get its health effect, just to get regular health, you would do it in the springtime, and that's what the Muskoka Watershed Council does. They come in May and June and do one sample to indicate what general health of a lake is. And I'll show you some of their activities later on. And if you go to the last, the last one on the right, that's July. As you can see, the temperature and oxygen are dropping near the bottom. And a thermocline is being set up. And a thermocline basically is an impediment for the movement of fish and chemistry between surface, which is mainly activated by wind, and the bottom water, which is mainly stagnant throughout the summertime. And in the fall, you can see there by September, in this particular lake, I think it's Gibson Lake, there's no oxygen below the thermocline, which means nothing can live down there. But the temperature has also dropped too. So I do these oxygen temperature profiles at all my sample locations, which I'll show you. So let's just start with the Severn River. This is between the Big Chute and Swift Rapids. And I sample the 4 locations there. And what we do is that I take, besides doing the oxygen temperature profiles, I do conductivity. And the important thing of conductivity is to determine the pool or the basin of water. Is there different basins within a lake? When you get to 6 Mile Lake, you'll notice that in the springtime and the fall, it's all one big water body. But in the summertime, we separate into different basins, where the conductivity can identify different basins. And because of that, we have different chemistry and so on. So here, if you look at the Severn River, you'll see it's quite similar all the way down, except for Lost Channel. And the reason it's similar all the way down is the river. So therefore, the conductivity should be all the same. The difference for Lost Channel is it has a different source water. And it comes into Lost Channel and then into the Severn River. We do Secchi disc measurements. That's the clarity of the water. So you put down a disc, it's a black and white disc, and you put it down, and when it disappears, you measure how far the depth is when it disappears. So it's the clarity of the water. And you can see the long, whoops, is there a pointer on here? There we go. This is, we've been doing this since 2006, so this is about a number of years, and you can see that clarity hasn't changed all that much. If you look at the average here and here, so that's good. So things have been steady. Phosphorus loading. Anything less than 10 is considered good. Anything between 10 and 20, so, and you don't want to see anything over 20. So in this case here, we got an average of 12.8. That is because most of the water down the Severn River comes from Couchiching and Simcoe does get a number of runoffs from farmers' fields and so on. So you'll always have a high load of phosphorus in the Severn River. And so you can see some of the results here. This year we just went up a little bit, 14.6 on average. Again, Lost Channel being a separate source, they had a little less phosphorus in their waters. This is Gloucester Pool. So basically between the Big Chute and Little Lake or the outfall at Dam 45. So I sample all these areas there. And again, there's your, whoops, Jesus, I gotta get these, okay, so there's your average. I've been doing this since 2005. So there's your average there. Conductivity, I think White's Falls Bay, that is runoff from 6 Mile Lake into White's Falls Bay. And where's the other one? Black River, there's that one there. See, it's quite unique because that's an inflow from Black Lake. So it's different conductivity, different basin of water, so that we can identify sources of contaminants and so on. Again, these numbers are considered fairly good. 5.5 clarity, and this year was 6.1. Again, here we go down. So the phosphorus has dropped between the Severn River and going through the Gloucester Pool. This is a fairly high value, just below the Big Chute, and this would be the outfall at Dam Lock 45. So you can see that in some cases they're a drop. I also go over to Baxter Lake because Baxter Lake enters into South Bay. So South Bay water source is Baxter Lake, which is Gloucester Pool. And I also, when sampling their water column, I found a thermocline at this particular point. None of these areas here had a thermocline. So I found a thermocline in Little Go Home Bay and also in Baxter Lake. So this is why I do the temperature profiles. And so when you sample for nutrient levels, you'll see that some of them, they're fairly similar to what the surface is. My bottom samples are about 1 meter off the bottom. And my surface samples are just about a foot or two below the surface. You go to 6 Mile Lake, I sample all these sites in 6 Mile Lake. And you'll notice here when I talk about basins, here is one basin up here, another basin down here, another one here, and another one up here. So you'll see that in the conductivity values. You can see different values along here, and that means that 6 Mile Lake sets up in the different basins. And so they have different chemistry and different phosphorus levels. Now you see here, whoops, get back here. Okay, you see here now we're getting much lower levels of phosphorus on average over the 12 years. And this year was a little higher in some of the locations, so the average for the year is a little higher. Trans-Canada Bay was a shallow bay. That's over by the provincial park, 6 Mile Lake Provincial Park. Long Lake, again, another always a little higher. And Hungry River is always higher, a little higher. And then I go to Gibson Lake. Flow in Gibson Lake is from the south to the north. The Gibson River, I think, is this one right here. This is, again, the conductivity is a complete different. It's a different body of water. Gloucester Pool, 6 Mile is one watershed. Gibson River is in a completely different watershed. And they receive their water from wetlands. And so their conductivity is different. But it's very similar throughout the lake. So they represent kind of a wetlands. The clarity is much lower. In other words, they got tannins in their water. That orangey color or that dark color, and they have tannins. And that's from kind of wetland areas and so on. Whoops, get this going again. Okay, phosphorus levels a little higher because it comes from wetlands and so on. And each one had a thermocline. So you can see some of these thermoclines down here are much higher than on the surface. And that means that they've had anaerobic conditions at the bottom and phosphorus have come out of the bottom. And you saw that in that oxygen temperature profiles where they lose the oxygen
in the late fall. Again, this is Go Home Lake. And the water comes in at Go Home Lake up here in Swallow Bay and moves its way down and through down to the control dam. Cynthia lives right about here, and the ice, she can't get across the ice bridge right here, so that's why she's stuck at home today. She's right about here someplace. Okay, they have some fairly consistent connectivity, so they're kind of a one basin, except for Manning Bay. Again, they get their water from Irvin Lake, which is a different source, so a different basin where all the other basins are the same. And again, their water quality is quite good. It's quite low, but they do have, sorry, down here, it is, sorry, okay, the clarity here is quite high. Their values are average around 10, and this year it was 10.4. So there have been consistency over the last 12 years in Go Home Lake. Gala Lake, small lake, I don't have a map for it yet, but Gala Lake is a fairly small lake. We only be able to get 3 sample locations. Again, they have tannin waters, so their clarity is somewhat reduced. But as you can see here, they have well, their average is 7.8. These values here I am questioning. I think this might be a lab problem. I'm going to talk to him about these, because these values, you shouldn't have, on this small lake, you shouldn't have this variance in phosphorus. So I'm thinking that might be a lab error. I did change lab this year because I used to go to Dorset to the Queen's lab, and they closed up last year. So I've had to go up to North Bay to get my samples analyzed. So I'm thinking there might be some lab problems here, because there shouldn't be that variance on a very small lake. Okay, this is Stewart Lake. 4 locations there. Again, they're fairly similar here because it's just a one big pond. And the clarity, they have some tannin problems there too. But again, that value there I'm questioning. That might be another lab error, because they shouldn't have that type of, these right here are fairly consistent. That's a very little high number, so I'm not quite sure how to interpret that. Myers Lake, this is the first year that they've joined the program, and this is another big pond, so their connectivity is very similar. This is average, and again, another value there I'm worried about. So, but everything else is consistent. Now, we also say do bacteria, and each of the lakes. We have volunteers at all the lakes that go out about 6 times a year to all these sites. Between all the lakes, we have about 50 sites. And they sample about 6 times each site, approximately. It's the majority of the budget that we have for this program. This bacteria work costs, out of the $5,000 I request each year, about half of that goes towards the bacteria sampling plates and the equipment that has to go along with the analysis of the collie plates and so on. This is Gloucester Pool. They weren't that active this year on sampling, but they did sample a couple of locations where these are exceedances of the provincial criteria for total coliform. Total coliform is basically runoff, it's dirt. So basically, this is probably a rainy day, and they had a lot of mud runoff, and the total coliforms were high. E. coli, that is from warm-blooded animals. So when you have an exceedance of that, that is of concern. Now, the provincial criteria is 100, but we've sent a recreational criteria of 10. So basically, this is above 10, but it's way below the provincial criteria. This is Myers Lake. The first year they've been doing some sampling, and they've had a number of exceedances of the provincial criteria for total. So we're going to have to do some more work in Myers Lake next year to find out why there's exceedances of this total. In a beach, that beach would be closed. Over here we had a few exceedances of the 10 level, but it's, again, we have to do some more bacteria work in their lake next year. And this is just a summary of the E. coli results from all the lakes. And you can see, because of that limited volume of work they did in Gloucester Pool, they were quite high on average. Say 100 would be the exceedance of the provincial criteria, but we like to keep it below 10, and most of them were below 10. And so the results are basically, there were a few anomalies in the data, and so I'm going to be talking to the lab about that. And there was a number of bacteria concerns, so I'm going to be purchasing some more plates next year and getting them out there and doing some more work. Basically, if you find an exceedance of the provincial criteria, I'm asking to go out for 2 more days in a row to find out if it's consistent over day, because coliform can be, one day it can be high, next day it can be low. It's a lot of it's affected by sunlight and so on. There's been a lot of controversy as to what water quality programs are conducted in our township. So I did a bit of research to find out who's doing what where. And this is for Georgian Bay. And this is the township, but this is for Georgian Bay. And this is what the district does. They go once per year to Waratahsee and sample 1 location. Cognisheen, once a year, 1 location. Tatanak, every 5 years, they do 1 location. Every 5 years, 1 location. So you can see there's not a lot of sampling being done by the district in Georgian Bay. And here's a sampling of SSCA. I think you went out about 8 times. I'm guessing about 8 times. And they do 1 sampling Oak Bay, Macy Bay, and Honey Harbor. So this is standard work. I didn't get into doing the study in North Bay and South Bay. And the last slide gives you an idea of what's happening on the inland lakes. And so these are all the lakes that I sample. The district goes into Baxter every 2 years, does 1 sample. 6 Mile every 2 to 5 years, do 3 sample sites. Myers Lake every 5 years does 1 sample site, and so on. So you can see there's not a lot of programs going on those lakes. Another program I run is this partnership program, and that's with the Ministry of the Environment. They supply a sample kit, and I have volunteers that go out once a year in these lakes to take 1 sample. But again, this is usually in the springtime. So what my program is doing is going out once a year and sampling all these sites. So in Baxter I do 1, Gala 3, etc., etc. 6 Mile I can do 7. I do 9 on Gloucester Pool. And I've been doing these sites for about 12, 13 years. And so, again, this is always in the fall, and that's what the Cardi associations want. They want to know that somebody's out there every year, and usually in the fall, because that's when the highest levels will be found of nutrients, and that somebody is checking. But as you can see, there's been a lot of consistency over the last 12, 15 years of nutrient levels. So in most cases, I would say things have not changed all that much. In some cases, it's gone down. So, and this is consistent with the district does, in the way of the district does all these lakes, and their results are pretty consistent over the number of years they've done them too. So basically, this sampling takes me 5 days to do all this sampling, and I do that on my 85 to 90% of the funding goes towards either the collar plates, equipment, and the analysis and so on. The remaining funding goes to myself preparing the report. I have equipment to replace. I have to purchase new equipment every so often. I got to repair that equipment. I've had it repaired a couple of times. I have to calibrate that equipment and so on. So that comes out of all that money, that little bit of money that I get. So possibly I only pocket maybe $300 or $400 for writing the report, and everything goes into maintenance of the equipment and so forth. Any questions?
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Who else? In this kind of water quality field, is that correct?
I worked for Ontario Power Generation at all the originally fossil, then nuclear stations, but water quality, air quality, and other fisheries and so on.
And your educational background is a BSc and a Master of Engineering in what?
Chemical engineering.
From where?
The University of Toronto.
Okay, just curious.
And it was a marine biology course from Guelph, my undergraduate.
Marine biology?
Yeah.
No, thank you.
And fisheries was minor. Any other questions?
I think that,
Oh, well then you have to raise your hand. Councillor Jarvis, otherwise I don't recognize you have a question.
What's wrong with that? Your worship. Conductivity is a measure of, was it water clarity?
Well, it's electrical potential of water.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean much. It really tells you if the body of water you're sampling is similar to other bodies. So in other words, it's like a river will be all the same. But as you saw in 6 Mile, by the fall, it sets up into about 4 or 5 different basins. And mostly because of runoff and the lack of basically flows and so on.
But it's an indicator, so it's conductivity, the electric charge running through the water, but what does that tell us about the water?
It tells you that you've entered a separate lake. So basically there's like 5 different lakes in 6 Mile Lake. And so you may experience different chemistry in those 5 different lakes. But in the spring and fall, the conductivity will, with all the overturning of the water, I haven't done any springtime, but they may become all the same.
Which means the water is good, is bad?
Turned over, yes, turned over. That doesn't mean much, It's just mainly that it may be ubiquitous in the springtime, in the late fall, but in the summertime it sets up into separate lakes or basins.
Okay, so just giving you characteristics for the water
Yeah,
body.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm doing, I do water testing off my dock for, is it Lake Partners?
Yeah.
Lake Partners.
Yeah.
And I'm not, that was no charge at all. Is that something that we could look at as well for doing this type of thing, or do we have to?
Yeah, I looked, what is the card machine? I looked that up. I looked up partnership programs for all these different locations. I didn't see it in the database.
Yeah, I'm waiting for results on that as well. I know that my stuff is not on board at the moment. I think the latest data they have was from, I think it was from 2017. I could be wrong.
Okay.
But, I'm not sure if the 2018 data is up on their
well, I
website.
couldn't find it in 2017 either.
It's something I'll have to ask them about.
Yeah, because I went through the whole partnership database, and I was expecting something from Georgian Bay, but I didn't find it. So that's good that you do it. It's a free program that ministry runs, and I would encourage people to do it. But again, it's a springtime thing. They're looking for a snapshot of what the lake or the area looks like after turnover, after everything's mixed. Where my program looks at the lakes and so on when things stratify.
Yeah, no, I noticed that their all their water quality request was for early in the season, and the Sechi disc is throughout the season.
Yeah. Well, that just does a clarity. There's a clarity change, and I wouldn't think in Georgian Bay it changes all that much. Where in our lakes with the tannins and so on, and the productivity, algae, well, yeah, basically algae productivity and so on, it would change seasonally. Okay.
Thank you very much.
You can critique my presentation later, too. I'll let you know.
Well done, Paul.
Well, we're in the very interesting situation in a meeting that started at 1 o'clock. We're now at almost 3:45, and I get to move one of the first motions, which is, be it resolved that the Committee of the Whole adopts the agenda of January 15th, 2019 as amended or circulated. All those in favor? Carried.
No one better ask for
Name on that one?
No.
All those that believe in
fair,
climate
budget
change.
presentation day is always long.
Well, I'm a little.
It's supposed to be 5 minutes, but it's impossible.
I'm a little concerned because I'm learning that if we want to go past 4:30, we need a motion approved, and we want to go past 6 o'clock, it has to be approved unanimously. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
You probably won't get that.
Yeah.
And some of us had engagements later in the evening, so this is a rather full agenda overall to try. Okay, the first report, item 6, is councillor conference attendance, and I believe that's over to you, Ms. Kennard.
That is me, Your Worship. And funnily enough, the first thing that your presenter said this morning was, well, you must have been at AMO. And the answer is no, we've never been to AMO. So I think they thought it was important as much as I probably think it's important. It's just attendance at conference for councillors is typically something that is done. It hasn't historically been done here for a number of reasons that I won't go into. It doesn't really matter. But it is quite typical that councillors go to conferences, and I think it's important that you do. That's where you make your networking. Certainly for me, and I know for staff that go to conferences, the sessions are valuable, but more valuable are finding somebody who's going through whatever problem of the week you're going through, because pretty much in municipalities, everybody's done the same thing at different times. So building those networks of finding people to help. So I've made many contacts that I call up and say, hey, have you seen this before? You got any ideas? So I think it's a good idea. Had a long discussion with the mayor about it. He also thinks it's a good idea. So AMO in particular is very tricky. The rooms come out on a specific day in January and they go in the first minutes. So in fact, I booked rooms hoping that council will, for the mayor and I, hoping that council will approve this thought. I was on the phone at 10 o'clock. I was on the website of one and the phone with another one, and I got my second choice at 10:01. So there probably isn't any more rooms, and it was good that I got the mayor and I each a room. So I'm suggesting that council may think about if they generally want to go to conferences. We've built a bit more money in the budget to it. We added a couple of years ago, I think $1,000 per council, but discovered that really doesn't cover. A couple of members went to the Community Adjustment Conference, and I think it's like $700 for registration, and then whatever the hotel is for 3 or 4 nights. Right. So council was putting out of their own pocket, which isn't really fair either. So I'm proposing that council has a policy on everybody gets to go to one and your costs are covered. In particular, that this year the mayor and I go to AMO, and that the councillors that are on Committee of Adjustment go to the OECA. I thought it was too late to go to Roma, which is another conference, but somebody was chasing the mayor this week saying there was still space. That being said, it's in Toronto. I would suspect there isn't any space at the hotel, but there's probably still space in the conference if there are councillors that wish to go to that. But just in general, it's a philosophy of, does council support this? And in particular on AMO, one of the great things about AMO is you get to do ministry delegations, so that if there's an issue that's of importance to the municipality, you request to make delegations to the minister. You get 5 minutes. It's pretty limited, and you don't get all the requests that you make either. So, but there might be some things that we want to talk about. The mayor and I were throwing around ideas like Phragmites on the public highways, fire ratings in provincial parks that are not in conjunction with ours. There's a million things that we could talk about, and I can bring that back to council at a later date. The delegation requests don't go out, I think, until June. So
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, I just, you were talking about Roma. I had somebody talk to me about Roma, and they said that relative to this township, it might be very wise for us to attend that. Doesn't Roma stand for rural Ontario?
Yeah, rural Ontario.
And we're kind of rural. So have you been to a Roma conference before?
No, so Roma and Good Roads used to historically be together, and in our past life, Brad would have gone with council to the combination, and then they split off. Good Roads is more of a technical conference that the engineers would go to, and Roma is more where the political side would go. And since that sort of happened since I've been here, no one's been to, so I haven't had any experience. I do have the program. It starts January 27th, and some of the sessions looked good. I just assumed because I was coming January 15th that it might be too late, but the mayor did get an invitation like a couple of days ago saying there's still time to register. So there is still time if councillors are interested. As I say, I suspect the conference hotel will likely be full, but still opportunity.
Well, we do have people here that are close to Toronto, so could you send that to me and perhaps Councillor Jarvis, and we can just take a look at that, because it was mentioned to me that the Roma conference would be worthwhile going to. So if you could, and I don't need a hotel, of course. So in the interest of perhaps lobbying, I think, as you said about the AMO conference, you can also get a little bit of time with the minister and that sort of thing if you have some agenda items.
And typically at AMO, so all the other municipalities in Muskoka go, and they'll do a joint delegation on something, but we never participated because we never went. To be fair, sometimes the delegations weren't relevant to us. A lot of times it was on hospital funding or things, but there were some things that we definitely could have participated on.
I see no other hands, so I'll say thank you very much. Well, there's a resolution attached to this one. That shows how much I know. Be it resolved that Committee of the Whole recommends that Council direct staff to ratify the attendance of the Mayor and Chief Administrative Officer for the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, or AMO, conference in August 2019, and that suggestions for minister delegation be brought back for Council's consideration at a later date, and that 2 councillors and 1 public member of the Committee of Adjustment be registered for the Ontario Association of Committee of Adjustment and Consent Authorities, OACA, conference in the summer 2019, should they wish to attend, and that a plan of council conference attendances for 2020 be brought back to deliberation in the fall of 2019.
So we're missing the Roma one on that resolution, are we not? Is there not any cost associated with that?
There would be an attendance cost, yes.
Yeah, Your Worship, at the time that I wrote the report, I assume Roma was full. We did budget, or we have planned for the budget that you haven't approved yet, the total amount to allow each councillor to go to 1 conference. So if they wished to find room in Roma, we would have money in the budget should you approve it. How's that? Kind of convoluted.
Should we modify the motion? I mean, because here it's at the end of the council, that a plan of council conferences attendances for 2020, but for 2019, you're very specific, as opposed to leaving it a little bit open.
Yeah, and so my thinking of 2020, so you'll have to backtrack that to 2019, is the only plan that I wanted is I thought you should spread yourselves out. So not everybody go to AMO, not everybody go to Roma, not everybody go, so I was just gonna bring a list and say, 1 person, 2 people are going here, 2 people are going here, 2 people are going here. I don't see a big crossover for this year because we already know who our Committee of Adjustment members are, so assuming they wish to go to whatever that is, CA. If a couple of different ones want to go to Roma and you and I go to AMO, it'll be too late to register anyone else for AMO, or at least to get a room in Ottawa because it's crazy busy. But
I was talking about Roma.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know.
Do we need a motion for Roma?
I don't think so. Council.
Just do it.
Okay. Councilor Yanko.
I mean, it's in our budget.
I think we should modify that 3rd paragraph where you say 2 councillors and 1 public member of the Committee of Adjustments. I don't know if Peter or Brian have been to Committee of Adjustment training?
I have.
Okay, so we may not need to have 2 counselors go. Why don't you just say 3 members? Because I think, although I don't want to degrade it, but I know our counselors maybe 1 year at a time, whereas other brand new members are 4 years. So they should get the priority to go. So we have, what, 2 new members? So if we had those 2 public and then Peter, that would be the 3 could go to the training. That would be the best. So instead of having 2 counselors, maybe it should be 1 counselor and 2 public members?
Councilor.
Your worship, that's totally at the will of council for sure, but conferences are different than training. No,
Yeah.
conferences, they have different sessions all of the time, and that's where you do the networking and whatever. It's hugely that being said, it's hugely popular among Committee of Adjustment members. We get asked every year, and every year I say, no, you went last year, we're gonna let someone new, no, it's not training, it's a conference. There's some educational components for sure.
A whole bunch of, you pick seminars, like you might go to the IPC seminar in the
Yeah.
afternoon.
But it's not, this is how you be a Committee of Adjustment member. We address that differently.
Or was it just up to 3 members? I mean, the only change that we might consider is then that up to 3 members of the Committee of Adjustment be registered for.
Yes, yeah.
And then we have flexibility.
Yes.
Sorry, Jim.
That's okay.
Do you want me to reread the motion, or should I just call for the vote? All those in favor? It is definitely carried. Thank you. That's not one of the motions in front of us at this moment. Would you like us to make that in front?
Brian doesn't want to go to Sudbury, that's all.
Okay.
It's usually in Ottawa.
Yeah, it was in Ottawa when I went.
Next item on the agenda is 6B, Clerk's Report 2019-06, Code of Conduct Update, please.
Does anybody have any questions?
No.
Perfect. Read the motion.
Do what Jessica says.
Be it resolved that the Committee of the Whole recommends that Council adopts the revised Code of Conduct and Council and Staff Relations Policy AD-001-2019. Councilor Wojcik.
It was a very long and intense document, and I thank you for it. Yes.
You can thank John Mascarin when he comes to educate you on it next month, because he wrote the Code of Conduct. He said our previous one was a little messy and not easy to read as our current Integrity Commissioner. So that's why there's no track line changes. It's completely new. Right. And also the required policy is something he wrote also that's completely new. And because this is Committee of the Whole, councillors always have the opportunity to review this over the next 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and give any suggestions, and talk to John Mascarin when he's here, and see if your suggestions can or should be implemented in the code.
So that was the idea of bringing it.
That was the idea of bringing it forward today, just to get it in front of you, and to give you the opportunity to review it and bring information back to me.
Right.
Good.
Shall I call the vote?
Yep.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. To the second page. We have no one signed up for open forum, so I'm going to go to Financial Services. Financial Services Report 2019-03, IT Stipend Update.
In June, Council approved IT remuneration of $1,200 per term for non-district council members, as well as $600 per year for every member. Subsequently, late in 2018, staff was informed that the district will be paying just under $1,700 to all of their members. So this report is here to see what you would like to do, and several options are provided. We didn't just pay the $1,200 because of the inequity. We wanted it for transparency, I guess, brought to yourselves so you could make a conscious decision on whether and so some suggestions are there, as well as the survey of all of the district municipalities that took place earlier in the year, showing that only Muskoka Lakes has an in-year payment. And then the recommendation is to be equivalent with the district and pay the almost $1,700, and then keep the $600 that you previously passed. You could also, the third option there is you could increase the in-year amount to $686, which is basically a gross up similar to what everything else did. That's why the district amount is higher for this elimination of the 1/3. So you can choose whichever you would like.
Does any councillor wish to speak to this? We have to narrow it down to, if I understand it correctly, option 1 is status quo, nothing changes.
There's no options to list here. Maybe you could just read the motion and then you can discuss from there, because there's numbers in the motion.
Okay, and this would be option, an equivalent of option 2, I believe, the way the motion
Correct.
reads.
I provided a bunch of options, but then provided a suggested resolution for equality with the district.
Which would be option 2. Or option 3. No, option 3, I think, was giving more than $600 to every person. So the motion that I have in front of me reads, be it resolved that Committee of the Whole recommends that Council approves that each elected official who is not in receipt of an IT stipend from the District of Muskoka receive the amount of $1,692 lump sum per term, and all council members receive $600 each year, or times 4 if you will, for the term, to assist with costs associated with the phone and internet usage and purchasing of a laptop. All those in favor? Or any further discussion?
I'm going to abstain. Well, I got my $16.
Yeah.
So that's a negative vote.
That's right.
Councillor Bochek?
I believe we should follow in line with the district amounts, and so the resolution as it reads is fine.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. But nobody noticed that the Muskoka Lakes gives more to the mayor, did they? I'm quite disappointed.
We ignored that.
I noticed. I'm feeling supported. Financial Services Report number 2, or B rather, 2019-04, Fees and Charges Bylaw. So the motion is, be it resolved that the Committee of the Whole recommends that Council approve the updated user fees and charges bylaw effective March 1st, 2019, as outlined in the report previously circulated. All those in favor?
So we're approving the table, that's what we're doing?
We're approving what was in the report there, and all those numbers, and the ones in red are the ones that have changed. Any items that anyone wishes to discuss in that regard? And I think I'm just going to confirm. All those in favor? Carried. You're pushy, aren't you?
Well, you know what?
It's working.
This is what I'm used to at 4 o'clock. We just started
Okay.
approving everything.
Okay.
Randomly pushing
No.
through.
Let's watch this one be pushed through. Financial Services C. Financial Services Report 2019-05, Budget Development Guidelines and Council Interview Results. And I'll read the motion before we hear the presentation. The motion is, be it resolved that the Committee of the Whole recommends to Council that the 2019 Township operating capital budgets be prepared with an overall increase of 0% for recurring items, 4.87% for exceptional items, and 2% for capital infrastructure purposes while maintaining the current service levels. And of course, if you read the report, you would know where all those numbers came from. Do you wish to, Jane?
I know it's late in the day, but this is a really important report. I will speak as briefly as I can. I just have a quick overview. The results of the decision today will guide the budget that we bring to you for discussion in February and ultimately, hopefully, approval in March. In the fall, I met individually with everybody, and the results of that are attached to the report. And Council's comments at that time were that you would support at least a 2% capital increase, as well as an increase for operating of inflation, which is about 3%. Staff have worked hard on the budget and repeatedly reviewed recurring revenues and expenditures, and have brought to you a 2% capital increase budget. It could always be more, but we felt this is what we could handle this year. As well, we brought 0% for recurring expenditures. And then, as noted in the report, there are 4 exceptional pressures this year, which add up to the 4.87%, which are 2% for the first debt repayment for MacTier Storm Sewer, 1.25% for council remuneration, primarily as a result of the elimination of 1/3 tax-free allowance, another 1.25% for volunteer firefighter wages to support increased training requirements, as well as 0.5% increase in grant requests, which you heard this morning, is primarily Georgian Bay Forever and SSEA. And that's also because they asked for, we approved something in the budget, something was approved in year, and then they're asking for the same plus more this year. Of the total tax bill, the township portion is 28%. The remainder is for district primarily, as well as education. So the impact of these amounts on an average taxpayer with a $300,000 assessment is $41. Staff recommends this in order to maintain services as well as the long-term financial stability of the township. And one unknown concern that we spoke about this morning is the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund grant. I think we spoke enough about that this morning. There is a chance that it could be reduced, and I recommend budgeting what we received last year, and then we will deal with any exceptional difference in year once we know the results of it. In summary, we recommend that the township, as the recommendation states, a 0% increase for recurring items, the 4.87% for the exceptional items, as well as 2% for capital infrastructure in order to maintain current levels of service and the long-term financial stability.
Yeah, before I always save my question to last. So I just want to ask one first, just out of, that's the pattern, but I just want to confirm, if we approve this motion, we're not, it's not in reality approving a budget, even though we're setting percentages here. So the final budget that we approve might actually vary from this a little bit. This is just basically approving that you use these guidelines.
Correct.
Thank you.
That we would bring back a budget next month with this, and then we go from there with the discussion. You can either add, which we did last year to capital, or take away, but that's when you tell us you're sort of setting some policy decisions today and throughout on what we're going to do. Yeah, just gives us direction today to what we bring back to you for further review.
It won't be cast in stone.
Correct.
Councillor Cooper.
Well, thank you for asking that question, because that was one of my 2 questions. But the other one is, you don't have the district percentage yet, do you? No. So we don't have any, sorry, go ahead.
Actually, I can comment on that. Each year that question's asked, and our budget stands alone from the district. We need to do our business with our amount of money, and they need to do their business. Having said that, the district budget has been released. It's a public document, and they have a 2.7% increase, which equates to, I think it was $12 on the average taxpayer of $300,000. So if you want to proceed with both, that would be $41 for us plus $12 for district, and then there's additional monies for garbage, of which we are higher because of the service levels we've requested from the district.
Sorry, but to get to the bottom line then, if you know what the district is doing, I don't equate to dollars per 300,000 or 100,000. What my constituents like to know is, what is the increase?
We will not know that till we're through.
Okay, you can't take what you've been, the guidance we've given you and extrapolate that and tell us what more or less we're talking about here?
Again, we just should be concerned with our own budget. And right now, if you were to pass what I'm suggesting, it would be $41 for an average assessment of $300,000. And I could, it depends what your assessment is on how it's going to impact, but the average assessment in our township is $300,000. And it would be $41 for the year.
But if I could just take that one step further, you're suggesting with this at 6.87% that taxes would increase due to us, and that 6.87% of roughly 1/4 of the overall. So if my math can work out, you know, that's under 2% of the total bill will be the increase. Whatever the total bill is, will go up just under 2% because of our budget if these
Correct.
guidelines prove to be true. And just over 1.5% they'll go up for the Muskoka budget if that is approved, because Muskoka represents roughly 50% of our total. So at
Correct.
this point, we're talking 3.5% before the schools have come in as a total increase.
And they are typically neutral.
So that's where I was going. I wanted to
Well, I got
know
there.
where we're landing. Where we were landing, not on the 300,000. I was
Yeah.
trying to get a percentage, and so it's about 3.5%.
I think 3.5% would be a reasonable guess, excluding whatever educational increase
I
there
was
is.
just asking for a guesstimate, and that's, so 3.5% we need to think about as we,
Yeah.
as we think about our budget. As we
Yeah. Councillor
finish it
Bolchak.
up. So that's good. Thank you. And
Councillor
I need
Bolchak, did you want to
Jane,
add?
you mentioned that, and I didn't quite hear you, it was a 4% increase in essentials?
No, it's 0 for the
Exceptions.
regular recurring amounts, and it's the 4.87 for the exceptional
The
items.
exception 4.8. Now, what percentage of our overall budget is that?
Well, the total amount is 268,000, and our total budget is about 8 million, so it's very small.
Okay, that's good, thank you.
Who had their hand up first between? Okay, Councillor Wyanko, and then followed by Councillor Jarvis.
You're going to be bloody aggressive around here. With all the presentations this afternoon, which ones have been included and which ones have not been included in the budget so far?
That's a good question. And you asked a question this morning about Georgian Bay General Hospital. I'll speak to that one now, I guess, is that, yeah, it is not included because it's not one of our services. So Georgian Bay General Hospital is definitely not included. It never has been. The others have been included pretty much at the requested amounts. And that's why we can bring that to you next time to decide at that point.
Do you want to
I
interrupt?
think Lori
or-
wants to speak to that as well.
Well, I just thought I could, since it came up again, I could answer Councillor
Yeah.
Hazelton's question. And I want to say it's this morning, but it's just a long time ago this afternoon. Council historically hasn't funded healthcare because it's not one of our services, but also because it's very tricky in Georgian Bay. Some of our residents go to Midland, some of our residents go to Perry Sound, some might go to Bracebridge. It depends where you live in the township. So instead, we've run a golf tournament where we've funded bigger centers for bigger things. We've funded the heart program, we funded the cancer, regional cancer. Regional things that we thought for sure all of our residents might use. It wasn't through tax dollars though, it was through the mayor's event, and we're looking at something different this year, so I'm not sure where that's gonna go. But we have historically not funded it through tax dollars. So yes, they come and ask us every couple of years. Now that Perry Sound has seen that they've come and asked us, they'll probably come and ask us too. So we're typically consistent with, we would love to help you and we value the importance of your programs, but we barely have enough money to do what we need to do internally, so we can't help. That's kind of been council's policy, and I think a reasonable one.
Historically, as long as I've been involved in the budget, I would say the majority of the years, we've done some bit of cutting. We found some things that we can cut in the budget. It may be less than $100,000, but we have been able to cut the budgets that's presented to us. If that happens again this year, is it something that you desperately want to put back in, or are we going to reduce the budget that much? You must have a wish list for that.
Thank you, Your Worship. Sorry, Jane, I'm talking over you. I think we're probably getting a bit too far afield because next month you'll actually see the budget and you'll know. So these are really just guidelines. But for the newer councillors, what you'll get is a budget with what we think are essentials in it, and then some of the things that we've heard or been asked for as an unfunded list. And then council will play and plug. So you look at the unfunded list and say, well, we actually think that's really important and we want you to move it into funded. And we don't think this is so important and we want you to move it into unfunded. So that's council's role, is to take that and plug and play and move around, and wherever it lands, it lands. You might add stuff, you might take stuff away. We don't know until you have that deliberations.
Okay, so that flexibility is totally there.
Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah, during my activities in December with regards to the volunteer firefighters dinner and a few other things, I had the impression we needed to replace a fire truck. Is that something we'd include in this, or how is that accounted for?
That's a wonderful question. We need to replace a fire truck next year. That's why I mentioned 2% is in there. We need a lot more. We have no funds in there for the fire truck at this point, so we're going to have to either, I would love for you to add 8% this year for that, or 4 this year, 4 next year, or we're going to be dealing with that next year through a tax increase, reserve drain, which the report states is not recommended. We had to drain it this year for the emergency replacement. So our reserves are quickly depleting. So I'd love the direction to add more to capital for that. And actually last year council was great, and we had a discussion about fire, and they added 25,000 last year just for the fire reserve, which again was used up this year.
Subsequent to that, we've already replaced a fire truck a few months ago.
Perhaps Tony would like to discuss that more, but yes, they're at different stations. But Tony, would you like to speak more on that?
So what dictates it is your insurance ratings go up, and it's set by the fire underwriters, and the fire underwriters state that a fire truck can be used up till 20 years. After that, it gets no rating, and your insurance company doesn't recognize that we have a truck. In the past, Georgian Bay has purchased trucks. So one truck was 1999, which was due to be replaced this year. We had the major breakdown. Instead of spending $40,000 into it, council decided to replace that truck. Well, in 2001, your next truck is scheduled for replacement. Hits its 20-year mark. So it's in the cycle to replace. We're looking at trying to come up with different options and so forth, but it comes down to what a lot of problems in the province of Ontario is experiencing right now. You have infrastructure and it's not funded for replacement. So you're going to be dealing with that?
For the rest of our lives.
Correct.
Councillor Ianco.
Okay,
Followed by Councillor Cooper.
I should have followed up. When you sat down with us and you made up a list of what our top 3 priorities were, was any of those programs included in your budget right now, or they are not in the budget?
Through the chair, it's likely to be a combination of both.
Okay.
The preliminary budget includes what staff feels we need to deliver current levels of service. So you will be reviewing, as Lori stated, similar to last year, a chart with what we have included and what we haven't. And that is what the discussion will be on, which you would like to add or not. And if you add, it's at a cost. It's either a tax increase or out of a reserve, which again, I recommend not, or issue debt, depending on the size of it. So yes, you'll see that next month, and some are in, some are out, depending on what staff feel is needed to carry out our core services.
Okay, so some of them are in. Okay.
See that next month.
Oh, come on.
Councillor Cooper.
Stay tuned.
So if we need to set aside some money for a fire truck, and we're already at 3.5%, we're going to have to think pretty hard about what we're going to shop. Just an observation. Thank you.
Councillor Wojcik.
The question is for Chief Van Ness. The larger municipalities, for example, Toronto or Burlington or wherever, is there not an opportunity there for them to get value out of a 10-year-old truck and sell it to a municipality like us? Say, Your new truck is $500,000. We buy a 10-year-old truck for $100,000. They get a value which they don't get at the end of the use of that vehicle. It's zero, which I think we already know. They can use those funds to go procure a new truck. I'm looking for a cost-saving measure here where we update our fleet, but being a municipality this size, do we need to update our fleet to a brand new shiny truck? Or can we get one from a municipality for a less cost that is going to give us 10 years of service for a tenth of the price? It's just a question. It's not a recommendation.
Through your chair, that is options that I have no problems looking at. The problem is it starts to tie your hands of what you can do, what you can't do. It's being able to jump on something right away. You don't have time to when you find one of these vehicles, to now start to chase council to get an approval to go for an expenditure. You've got to sit out there. I have done it in the past with the municipality I was last at. We bought 2 used vehicles to get through, I'm going to say, those crunches. So for me to not do it, but then there becomes leadway. You're not following procurement policy. There's a number of things that you as a council would have to give direction on and so forth.
The reason I say this is because I know in our last purchase you were able to find quite a discount on a vehicle that was required. I don't know the reason for the discount. It was used, it was ordered in error, something, but we did end up paying a lot less than we thought we were going to pay. And I just thought, I was thinking about this expenditure and I thought, boy, a small municipality like ours, when we buy a brand new fire truck, wouldn't it be better that Barry buys a brand new fire truck and we get the one that's 5 years old?
One of the concerns with that is when you're buying off a municipality such as Barrie or City of Toronto is even worse, that when you're buying that truck is already, it's done. It becomes that maintenance nightmare, shall we say, for you. So that's why I say you have to be, there's a lot of research, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and then so forth. I'm already working on I'm going to say a solution for our financial woes in that capital process to go forward, but there's a number of things that have to happen first, and a lot of this will get addressed through your asset management program for the future, which I hope will eliminate a lot of this problem for the future.
So long as it's a bunch of volunteers. Should I read the motion? Be it resolved that the Committee of the Whole recommends to Council that the 2019 Township operating and capital budgets be prepared with an overall increase of 0% for recurring items, plus 4.87% for the exceptional items, plus 2% for the capital infrastructure infrastructure purposes, while maintaining the current service levels. All those in favor? Carried. Does that mean I can do this one now? I see no new business on our agenda. Gentlemen, the meeting is not over yet. Exactly. The resolution in front of us is, be it resolved that the Committee of the Whole does now adjourn at 4:20 until Tuesday, February 12th, 2019 at 1 p.m. or the call of the chair. All those in favor? Carried. Now you can chat away.
It's kind of weird allowed to talk.
Can you speak up for all? Not as much as even talking this entire thing.
Share with all class, Peter.
What did you say, Jessica?
I said not as much as
I'm
you
sorry, I can't hear you. I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Jessica.
Thank you.
Is this a present?
This is the answer to one of Al's questions.
Thanks for Jamie to do,
So, $400,000, right?
Supposedly. But in return,
Yeah.